Chapter 626. Even though the dragon tribe was neglected due to their attractiveness, Tina wasn't going to let them starve to death. She would still distribute some small fish and shrimps for them to eat. After that, Lin and Tina went to all the tribes and gave them new student packages before departing with a satisfied expression. As for languages, Tina had intentionally or unintentionally instilled them with the Tai-Chu language and pointed out a way for them to learn. Otherwise, Lin would have to be completely dumbfounded by the fact that he had to learn a few different types of indigenous languages. Now, the last step is to create a star, Tina said with a smile. Lin's heart jolted with shock as he stared at Tina with incredulity. Create stars? Shouldn't there be stars already? Oh, the stars you see in this world are fake. I created them so that the night wouldn't be too monotonous. You told me that the Darkwing tribe needs to absorb the power of the stars to grow, so I have to create real stars, Tina explained. That doesn't make sense. I can clearly sense the power of the stars, Lin replied. What you see and feel is only because I want you to see and feel them. That's all. But in essence, they're all fake. Oh, right? Even the moon is fake. Tina chuckled. Lin, he calmed down, rubbed the space between his eyebrows, and continued. Then what should you do? You have to realize that every single star in the sky is actually an extremely powerful star, which means that every single star is a sun. You want to create a sky full of stars? That's a project I can't even begin to imagine. Also, do you have enough space in your world? Tina wagged a slender finger as a charming smile appeared on her face, and she said, Who told you that a star that possesses the power of the stars has to be the sun? The light of the sun travels through the universe for countless miles and absorbs the energy of the universe to form the power of the stars. However, there is another way, which is to use the essence of the power of the stars to create stars that contain the power of the stars, then hang the stars in the sky not too far away from the continent. Then, I'll set up another rule of this world. All living beings in this world will have their strength constantly reduced once they're more than 1,000 miles away from the surface. As long as their strength doesn't surpass mine, they'll never be able to escape this world. But how can their strength surpass mine? I'm a master of this world, haha. I believe they will get used to this rule and think that this rule is the truth of the world. If a highly intelligent life form were to use a technological creation or some kind of powerful divine ability to observe, they would be able to conclude that the stars are the sun in the universe that gives off light and heat. This is the scene I want them to see. In this way, not only did we suppress their actions, but we also gave them the illusion that the universe is very big and filled with infinite hope. Tina became more and more excited as she spoke, but Lin was starting to doubt his own life. Fake. It's all fake. The stars were fake, the moon was fake, and even this world was fake. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. He suddenly thought of Earth. Were the things that people saw what Nuwa wanted them to see, so that they could see it? After all, no one had really been to the galaxy, so could those things be fake? Then there was the Tai-Chu continent, and Lin felt like he was being possessed, and the urge to explore and verify his theory was welling up in his heart. Sigh, what a pity. I still have to find an object that contains the power of the stars. Without a reference, I won't be able to create it. Tina suddenly sighed as she spoke, and a look of frustration appeared on her face. And Lin came to his senses, and a thought suddenly occurred to him. I have 2 stardust fruits that I collected from the huge starlight tree in my storage ring. They are imbued with the essential power of the stars, so they should be usable, right? Tina's entire body became excited upon hearing this. That's great. Let's go out first, Jine and Lin. Whoosh! A rush of dizziness ensued, and Lin returned to his original world. Tina was standing before Lin, swinging his arm with anticipation on her face. Jine and Lin, where are the stardust fruits? Hurry up and show them to me. And Lin brought out the stardust fruits upon hearing this. After Tina's appraisal, they were usable. Thus, Tina's mirror world became different, and all of the fake stars became real stars. Time passed by, and all of the living beings of the various tribes gradually grew up and began to reproduce. The first generation of dragon tribe cultivators gradually grew dragon scales, and their bodies also grew larger and larger as they became the rulers of the sea. They were blessed by the heavens, and each and every dragon was able to fuse the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into their bodies. In other words, during the Tao body stage, they were able to cultivate on their own. Furthermore, they could also control the power of water. After reaching adulthood, even the ferocious and violent dragonfish were no match for them. The pristine white holy martial clan cultivators were even more valiant and skilled in battle as they expanded their territory. They had developed a rudimentary martial Tao from a very young age, and they intentionally sparred with one another as well as taught the next generation. Adult holy martial clan cultivators loved to battle massive tyrannosauruses in order to hone their martial Tao. The most powerful holy martial clan cultivators could already kill a Tyrannosaurus rex with a single punch. Their bodies had most likely already reached the pinnacle of the Tao body stage. The heavenly turtle tribe and the spirit fish clan lived the most leisurely lives. They loved to explore the mysteries of the world, observe the stars at night, derive the principles of all things, and research major unsolved mysteries, such as who they were, where they came from, and why they were still alive. They would also occasionally explore the beauty of nature and invent all types of divination techniques and sorcery techniques. The Snake Spirit Clan lived the most carefree lives. They possessed the ability to communicate with all things, understand all things, and feel all things' emotions. As such, they were always able to strike a favorable impression in the hearts of all living beings around them. They had countless underlings wherever they went, and it could be said that they were the most powerful tribe in the world. The Stone Tribe lived the most monotonous and boring lives. They very rarely moved, and all they did was stand on the spot in a daze, absorbing the power of the earth and listening to the pulse of the earth. Grass grew on their bodies, and all types of small animals took up residence on their bodies, but they were completely oblivious. The most active time in their lives was probably when two Stone Tribe cultivators spent the night together. They exercised vigorously for an entire minute, and Lin was extremely envious of this. The Darkwing Tribe lived the most leisurely lives. They slept during the day and wandered around at night, basking in the stars. They had nothing to do. Due to the fact that their nest was situated in the sky, all of the living beings on the land seemed to be inferior to them. They refer to themselves as envoys from the heavens, and they would occasionally spread their wings to fly to the land to patrol the mortal world. The Vermilion Bird Tribe lived the most freedom. They had almost covered half of the continent, and they roamed the world without any restrictions. Tina was currently quite troubled by the issue of their reproduction. After all of them were so carefree and had never considered the issue of finding a mate. Even now, all of the Vermilion birds were single. In the worst-case scenario, she would have to force them to mate, and Lin was very envious of the Vermilion Bird Tribe. They didn't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, but the heavens were willing to give them to them. The tribe that surprised Lin the most was the True Demon Tribe. They lived in the harshest environment and faced the largest number of mutant beasts. It could be said that their combat and survival abilities were the most powerful among all the tribes. As for why they were able to survive in that kind of environment, that was Tina's idea. The true demons were clearly antagonists, so she couldn't let them be too happy. These were Tina's exact words. And Lin was struck by a strong sense of sympathy toward the true demons upon hearing this. What kind of experience is it to have a subjective god? If the true demons were to learn this truth, they would probably cry tears of joy. Aside from their combat and survival abilities, they were also very good at cooking. They could cook and eat anything, and no mutant beast could escape their stomachs. They were extremely similar to the Kin tribe. Perhaps this had something to do with the environment they lived in. They knew how to survive and how to eat. For some reason, and Lin suddenly thought back to the strange illusionary realm in the Shouyang tomb as he watched the development of the true demons. There was also a little demon who knew how to cook there. Was this a coincidence? Chapter 6:27. In any case, These 9 tribes were all adapting to this world and were able to survive in this world through their own efforts. In the future, Tina and Lin wouldn't need to intervene anymore. Their arrival brought a new lease of life to this world and also influenced the structure of this world. That's right, the dinosaurs were still the rulers of this world. However, the emergence of these 9 tribes dealt an unprecedented blow to the dinosaurs. As the generations passed, the 9 tribes became more and more powerful. Some of the tribes that were proficient in research, such as the Snake Spirit Clan, Holy Martial Clan, and Heavenly Turtle Tribe, had even developed basic cultivation methods. However, on the other hand, the dinosaurs' power didn't increase at all. And Lin knew that it was their intelligence that prevented the dinosaurs from becoming more powerful. They weren't highly intelligent creatures, so they couldn't create or learn cultivation methods and divine abilities. They could only rely on their innate talents. As such, some of the most powerful beings among the dinosaurs were lacking, so they could only rely on numbers. At this moment, spirit-nurturing stage powerful beings had already appeared among the 9 tribes, and the power level of this world had risen to another level. According to Lin, this world had almost reached the pinnacle of the low magic planes. As the 9 tribes continued to expand, an unavoidable war with the dinosaurs finally erupted. This was an earth-shattering battle that involved the issue of territory and resources. Within a forest in the south, hordes of winged dragons pounced toward a gargantuan green tree. They could sense an extremely powerful vital energy fluctuation emanating from the tree. They loved trees like this, and they loved this forest. Vermilion birds could inhabit trees and change the nature of trees. This group of close to 100 winged dragons was only facing a single vermilion bird. Countless sound waves and air blasts instantly crashed toward the bird, which was enshrouded in white flames. Tree trunks were snapped, and leaves were pulverized in the wake of the shock waves. The firebird was fearless. With a soft cry, flames swept out from the sky and collided with the incoming attack. The energy tore each other apart. Then, under the horrified gazes of the hundreds of pterosaurs, the flames broke through the air cannons and quickly enveloped the hundreds of pterosaurs. Blood-curdling cries reverberated through the air as one cooked winged dragon after another plummeted from the sky. The firebird revealed a look of disdain. After glancing at him, it flew back to the huge green tree and closed its eyes to rest. High up in the sky, and Lin clicked his tongue in wonder as he turned to the woman beside him. As expected of the baby you carried, it's already at the spirit-nurturing final stage. You didn't give it a hack, did you? Humph! Am I such an elf? Tina waved her fist through the air as she glowered at Lin. And Lin shrugged and looked at the hundreds of images in front of him. These images were all of the battles between the various races and the dinosaurs. In the end, the battle was always one-sided, and the dinosaurs were beaten black and blue. Even if the dinosaurs won the battle, it was through the Dragon Sea strategy. There was no advantage at all. For example, in the image, an army of 30 dragons was torn apart by thousands of ichthyosaurs. Before they died, they killed hundreds of ichthyosaurs before they died of exhaustion. Another example was the intelligent dinosaurs who invented all types of stone tools, protective gear, and weapons. However, the Holy Martial Clan invented gloves that could draw vital energy out of one's body to enhance one's strength and spell techniques. As a result, weapons were on a completely different level. An adult Holy Martial Tribe cultivator could shatter the head of Shark-Toothed Dragon wearing a stone helmet with a pair of gauntlets on it. The difference in weapons was ultimately a difference in intellect and talent. No, this was a difference in intelligence. Even though the dinosaurs had been enhanced by Tina's aptitude, this was the upper limit of their life force. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't reverse the situation unless they could become highly intelligent life forms. The battle over territory continued for several decades. In the end, the dinosaurs' numbers plummeted, and their territory shrank further and further. The former rulers of the world were no longer glorious and were reduced to second-tier life forms. Now, a new ruler of the world had been born. They were the 9 tribes with high aptitude and aptitude. After they established their position in the world, some sort of change occurred in the world. It seemed to have become more lively and full of vigor. It seemed to be full of vigor and vitality. All right, the spiritual aura value of this world is high enough now. We can start creating humans. Tina's eyes were glowing with excitement and anxiety. And Lynn was also very excited to hear about creating humans. Creating humans. This was the most legendary miracle in the world. No one knew where humans came from, but the humans on Earth were most likely created by Nuwa. Then what kind of being was Nuwa? She was a legendary being that transcended beyond the Tai Chu continent, even more so than the Tao integration stage true gods. No one could describe her exact cultivation base, but it was not an exaggeration to refer to her as a god of creation. Now, Tina was going to do the same thing as Nuwa. How could Lin remain calm? Then what do we need to prepare? Lin asked with excitement. I might need an immortal pill that contains both wood type and spiritual power. Tina looked at Lin with a hint of unease on her delicate features, as if she was afraid that Lin would refuse. No problem. Lin clapped his hands together before asking, "Is there anything else you need?" Tina faltered slightly, as if she didn't expect Lin to agree so readily. "Not at the moment, all right. Let me out, and I'll get you an immortal pill right away," and Lin said without any hesitation. Tina looked at him with a grateful expression before placing a soft, warm hand on Lin's forehead. After a rush of dizziness, Lin regained consciousness. Tina's hand was still placed on Lin's forehead, and she slowly opened her eyes with an exhausted expression. "Jine and Lin, I'm going to sleep for a bit. Wake me up when you come back." "No problem." And Lin hurried out the door and flew toward Do Shui Palace. 4 hours later, he returned excitedly with a 5th-grade immortal pill in his hand. However, right at this moment, Lin saw a familiar figure. Su Xiaolan had her hands on her hips as she looked at Lin with an enraged expression. "Lin, you've been skipping classes for close to a month, and it's almost time for the end-of-term exams, so why aren't you coming to class? Even I can't apply for leave for you now. I'm at the most important stage now, so please apply for a few more days," and Lin said with a slightly sheepish expression. "The most important stage? What are you busy with?" Su Xiaolan's brows furrowed slightly as she stared at Lin's flushed face. "I'm busy making humans with Tina," and Lin replied excitedly. Su Xiaolan's body swayed slightly. "Making humans? That's right. You didn't expect that, did you?" And Lin laughed heartily before suddenly feeling a chill run down his spine. "That's right. I really didn't expect that." Su Xiaolan's face convulsed slightly, but she then realized something and asked, "How do you do it?" "Didn't I tell you before that I can project my consciousness into Tina's world? Right now, her world has already developed to the point where humans can be created. Isn't it exciting to create new humans?" And Lin asked excitedly. Su Xiaolan heaved a sigh of relief as she nodded. "It is quite exciting. Then go do what you need to do. I'll apply for a week of leave for you at most. After that is the end-of-term exams, and the homeroom teacher will come and find you. I won't be able to stop you then." Su Xiaolan waved her hand. "Thank you, Celestial Maiden Xiaolan." And Lin waved goodbye after receiving her permission, and he couldn't wait to return to his dorm. Geez. In order to see that world, make humans, he doesn't even want to look at me. Is it really that fun to make humans? Su Xiaolan murmured to herself before shaking her head and walking toward her dorm. Chapter 628. Lin returned to his bedroom to find Tina sleeping soundly. He hesitated momentarily before repressing his excitement and deciding to let Tina rest for a while. After all, he didn't have to expend any energy to enter the mirror world, but Tina had to accelerate time in that world, which required a lot of energy and would result in a lot of fatigue. After an indeterminate period of time, Tina slowly opened her eyes, which were as dazzling as gems. You're back, Jine and Lin? Why didn't you wake me up?" She spoke in a soft voice, as if she hadn't completely woken up yet. "You woke up as soon as I came back." And Lin explained with a smile before tossing the immortal pill to Tina. "This is an immortal pill that contains both wood type and spiritual power. Take it." Tina accepted the immortal pill with an elated expression. Then, Jine and Lin, let's start creating humans. And Lin nodded with excitement. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. And Lin entered Tina's world, and Tina, who had reverted to her human size, also entered with him. At this moment, Tina's flawless features were also filled with a grave expression. The human race and the other 9 tribes were all highly intelligent beings. However, they were actually different. The 9 tribes were superior to humans in terms of lifespan, physical strength, innate abilities, and bloodline power. However, this didn't mean that humans were inferior to them. The human race had one advantage over the 9 tribes, and that was their inventiveness. That's right, humans were very creative and were more adept at drawing on external forces than the 9 tribes. Regardless of whether it was the countless cultivation tools or the technological inventions of the universe, the human race was far superior to the other tribes. This was the conclusion drawn from the Tai Chu continent. It wasn't that the other tribes hadn't invested much effort in tool refinement and technology, but the human race had always stood at the pinnacle of tool refinement and technology. As long as they were at the same cultivation base, the human race would always be more inventive than the other tribes. It was exactly because of this that Tina's plan to create humans was delayed even further than the 9 tribes. She had to wait until the world was developed to its fullest before she could create humans. In her heart, perhaps she had also acknowledged that the human race was slightly more intelligent than the other 9 tribes. This might be the instinct of a world lord. Somehow, she felt that now was the best time to create the human race. They arrived at Chi-Lu City, right next to the Black Tower. Tina had already swallowed that immortal pill. Although Lin couldn't see any changes in her, he was sure that Tina's life force was flourishing in the outside world. Just like the 9 balls of light, I also need a template of human life essence to ensure the success rate. Tina turned to Lin as she spoke and asked, "Can I extract a drop of your blood?" Lin's mouth twitched, and he said uneasily, "Use my life as a template? Could it be a clone? Even if it wasn't a clone, after using my life essence, wouldn't they have my bloodline, and then I would have an entire world of human descendants?" The more he thought about it, the more afraid he became. Tina burst into laughter. "Jine and Lin, it's not what you think. I used your life essence just to feel the human form of life. After that, I'll use the resources of this world to create humans, so it has nothing to do with you. All right, then go get it from outside." And Lin nodded with an uneasy expression. To his surprise, Tina didn't move. Instead, she looked at Lin with a pitiable expression. "What is it?" And Lin was perplexed. "I just gave it a try." Tina pouted as she said, "Your skin sure is thick. Giant and Lin, I bit down with all my might, but it didn't even bleed. You should do it yourself." And Lin, only now did he realize that he possessed the body of the war god. Without his permission, no one could break through his defenses. And Lin went out and extracted a drop of blood from his body before giving it to Tina. He then entered Tina's world again. This time, Tina was fully prepared. The great Tao of heaven and earth resonated as vital energy rippled through the entire world. Countless living beings looked up anxiously, unsure of what was about to happen. The energy of all things converged on Tina's fingertip, and Lin's breathing accelerated as he stared intently at Tina's fingertip. 2 extremely pure orbs of light appeared on her fingertip, imbued with boundless possibilities and hope. And Lin instinctively wanted to approach them. "Go." Tina pointed a finger forward, and the 2 orbs of light landed on a patch of empty ground, where they transformed into a pair of huge white eggs. Boom! The entire heaven and earth seemed to have undergone another transformation as soon as the 2 eggs appeared. Rainbow light enshrouded the entire sky, imbued with boundless vitality and possibilities. And Lin's focus, however, was elsewhere. He blinked in confusion. "Why aren't there 1,000 eggs?" Tina rolled her eyes at Lin. "I don't have the life essence of a return to void stage mighty figure to guide me. 2 eggs is enough to tire me out." "Oh." And Lynn nodded and eagerly flew over to touch the huge egg that was half the height of a grown man. The egg was smooth to the touch, and it gave off a soft and warm feeling. Tina also flew over. Her eyes were darting about, and no one knew what she was thinking. Hey, Jine and Lynn, do you think we should make these two humans even more perfect? Tina suddenly asked. Perfect how? And Lynn's brows perked up. Intelligence and consciousness naturally can't be adjusted. However, our bodies can be adjusted. We can make their bodies more powerful, modify their genes, eliminate all illnesses, and completely unleash their latent potential. We can also implant boundless knowledge into their bodies so that they'll be born knowledgeable. Tina became more and more excited as she spoke, and Lynn fell silent. Make the human race have such a high starting point? Was that really a good thing? Life was a process of constant evolution, and the higher one's starting point, the easier it would be to progress in the future. However, for some reason, and Lynn was feeling a little conflicted. If they don't have any illnesses or pain, they won't have a determined Tao heart. If they're born knowledgeable, they won't have the desire to explore, and they'll take many things for granted. It's very likely that they'll lose their creativity and imagination. I don't know about other races, but I think if humans are too perfect, they might not be humans anymore. And Lynn offered his opinion, but he didn't give Tina any orders. The final decision was still in Tina's hands. Tina thought about it carefully before giving up on that idea in the end. So be it. I'll just let nature take its course. These two humans are the representatives of the first generation of humans and have received the blessings of heaven and earth. Even though they're under my guidance, they're still born in response to all things, so it's not a good idea for me to interfere. Time accelerated once again. After a period of gestation, the two huge white eggs finally hatched. And Lynn was greeted by the sight of two extremely adorable children with snowy white skin, black hair, and black eyes. They appear to be around 3 to 4 years of age, and they surveyed the world around them with curiosity on their faces. They were completely naked, and their bodies were perfectly sculpted. Furthermore, they were able to walk upright as soon as they hatched. A pure and flawless aura emanated from their bodies, making one feel as if they were the most perfect treasures. And Lynn was astonished. How did they become so big? I don't even have to feed them now. Jine and Lynn, why are you always so focused on unexpected things? Tina slapped her own forehead with a resigned expression. Let's go hug the kids. And Lynn couldn't wait any longer. Tina was also thinking the same thing. She stopped time acceleration and flew toward the two humans within Lynn. Chapter 629. The two confused children were clearly very nervous and fearful at the sight of Lynn and Tina, and they involuntarily stumbled back a few steps. Don't be afraid. We're all good people. Tina smiled, and her voice seemed to be imbued with the power to reassure them. Sure enough, the two little guys were not very nervous and fearful after hearing this. Instead, they looked at Lynn and Lynn with curiosity in their eyes, making them appear especially adorable. And Lynn picked up the little boy while Tina picked up the little girl with a joyful expression. Wow, his skin is so white and soft, so adorable. And Lynn couldn't help but praise as he poked the little boy's delicate cheek. The little boy blinked his bright eyes and imitated Lynn's actions as he poked Lynn's cheek, causing Lynn to burst in a hearty laughter. Tina was also very fond of the little girl in her arms, and the little girl was sucking on her finger with a ladle-like expression. She was very obedient, and she would occasionally smile sweetly as if she was enjoying being held by Tina. And Lynn, let's give these two children a name. Tina's interest was piqued, and she suggested with a dainty smile. When they first created the 9 races, there were simply too many eggs, so they couldn't be bothered to give them names. However, there were only 2 humans now, so it was more convenient to give them a name. And Lynn thought about it for a moment before suggesting, how about we call them Adam and Eve? Adam, Eve. Tina repeated the name before turning to Lynn and asking, is there a meaning to it? There's no meaning to it. It's just a name I came up with. And Lynn waved his hand. Nice names. Then you'll be called Adam and Eve. Tina looked at the 2 children before her with a smile. She had only just finished her sentence when the great Tao of Tao appeared in the sky again. A strange symbol suddenly appeared on the foreheads of the two children. The boy's symbol was sharp and menacing, while the girl's symbol was curved and smooth, and their auras also became more ethereal. Then, the runes disappeared, and everything returned to normal. And Lin was startled by this scene. He looked at Tina in shock. "Did you cheat on them?" Tina pursed her lips. "No, I only gave them names. As for the changes after that, it was all a gift from this world." And Lin blinked. "Aren't you this world? It's not the same. It's not the same. I'm just an existence with the highest authority in this world, equivalent to being omnipotent. However, I'm still separate from this world. The world is an independent entity," Tina explained as she wagged her index finger. And Lin looked at the two children in front of him and felt that they were quite impressive. In other words, they were blessed by this world. As expected of Adam and Eve, they were born with cheats, and Lin was looking forward to their growth. These two children have only just been born, so their basic combat prowess is the weakest among all of the highly intelligent races. Even though they've already been weaned on milk, we still have to provide them with some food, and Lin said. Tina thought about this for a moment before waving a hand through the air. Many saplings burst forth from the ground before quickly growing into lush and lush trees in just a few seconds. Immediately afterward, all types of fruits appeared on the trees. The area within a radius of 100 feet was instantly transformed into an orchard filled with the aroma of fruits. And Lin had already grown accustomed to Tina's power of creation, but why did it feel so familiar when she was building an orchard? "Are there any forbidden fruits in the orchard?" And Lin asked in a curious manner. "Forbidden fruits? What's a forbidden fruit?" Tina blinked in confusion, and Lin heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing this. Thank God there are no signs of Adam and Eve eating forbidden fruits. Otherwise, I'm starting to wonder if I'm playing some kind of game. I've also implanted the Tai Chu language into their bodies, so they'll be able to learn everything on their own. After all, it's going to take a long time for all of the major races to unify their languages, Tina continued. And Lin nodded. He didn't have much to say in this regard. Tina waved a hand through the air, and two sets of intricate green garments appeared on Adam and Eve's bodies. The two of them looked at the beautiful garments, and their eyes widened with surprise and elation, as if a door to a new world had just been opened to them. Tina had cast a protective spell technique on the garments. After all, there were only two humans, and if they were to die, they would have to be rebuilt. That would be a lot of trouble, so it was better to give them some extra benefits in the new student gift bag. As for the other races, they didn't receive the same treatment. After all, they only had 1,000 eggs, so it didn't matter if a few died. After that, and Lin and Tina left the scene again. Time passed by quickly, and Adam and Eve lived happily ever after. They treated the orchard as their own home. When they were hungry, they would pluck fruits from the orchard, and when they were tired, they would take a nap beside the tree. Occasionally, they would wander around Chi Lu City, entering all types of shops and playing with all types of furniture. Adam and Eve first viewed the artifacts in Chi Lu City as toys, but as time went on, they began to view them as tools. Toys and tools were only one word apart, but the meaning behind them was completely different. After another year or two, they entered a library and flipped through the toys known as books. Adam and Eve looked at the strange lines on the books, but they seemed to be able to understand what they were saying. This was a very novel experience. The two of them flipped through the books one after another, trying to decipher what they were saying. It was as if they had encountered a clear spring in a desert, and they were so hungry that they forgot to eat or sleep. They really did forget to eat or sleep. They didn't even play with their toys or eat anything. Only when they were about to collapse from hunger did they remember to pluck fruits from the orchard. Toward the end, the two of them even found it troublesome and carried a large bag of fruits into the library. They would eat when they were hungry and continue reading after they were full. Even Lin was a little impressed by this scene. If Adam and Eve were born on Earth, they would definitely be top students. They would only be lacking the words, "I love learning," carved into their foreheads. Perhaps the desert of thought had encountered an oasis of knowledge, which was why they were so eager to learn. They didn't have a choice in what they read. They flipped through the books along the shelves and began with all types of stories. They were very confused by why all of the stories were so strange, such as when cultivators held a spell formation convention and everyone turned up. They didn't understand the term people, but weren't they the only people in the world? Even though there were many things they didn't understand, that didn't stop them from reading. After reading about folklore, they continued to read books on literature, science, and engineering. After that, they would try to learn from the knowledge in the books. It just so happened that there was no shortage of materials in this city, and there was no shortage of finished products. Their knowledge and worldview were perfected through learning and practice. Thus, they lived like this for several years, and even Lynn was in awe of their perseverance. At around 20 years of age, Adam had become a handsome young man, while Eve's skin was snowy white, and she was as beautiful as a goddess. The two of them continued to study with great eagerness, as if they had a hack that they would never get bored of. One day, Adam pulled out another book according to the order on the shelves. The packaging of this book was very strange. It was yellow. On the old, yellowed cover, there was the outline of a man and a woman embracing each other. Their mouths were pressed together, which was a little strange. There were a few large words on the cover: flower appreciation, pornography. Chapter 630. And Lynn had Tina stop the time acceleration with an excited expression. His instincts told him that what was going to happen next was not going to be as simple as it seemed. Within the library, the flower appreciation of erotic paintings? What was this? Could it be a book on floral art and flower appreciation? Adam flipped open the book with a confused expression, upon which he was greeted by the sight of a man and a woman intertwined together. Eve, come and see what this is. Adam's expression turned pale with fright. Eve made her way over to him, and a fragrant scent wafted through the air. She made her way over to Adam's side, upon which a man and a woman were intertwined in a strange position, and they were both completely naked. This is... Her heart rate suddenly accelerated, and she flipped to the second page. On the second page, the man was rubbing the woman's two snowy white mounds with his hands. The woman's face was flushed, and her cherry lips were slightly parted as an expression of enjoyment appeared on her face. Her legs were intertwined with the man's. Adam swallowed nervously, and his body felt a little warm as he flipped to the third page. The man in the book had revealed a black metal rod, which he thrust into the woman's opening. It was as if this was the perfect balance of life and death. Yin and yang complemented each other and intertwined with one another. The atmosphere in the room instantly became a little ambiguous. Both of them could hear each other's hearts pounding. Eve flipped to the fourth page. Then the fifth, the sixth. There were different images on each page depicting a man and a woman in a strange position. Adam and Eve's faces became redder and redder as they read on. They felt like the man and woman in the book were fighting, but how could there be enjoyment in a fight? Could this be a dance? No, that wasn't right either. This was most likely a new form of life, a grand and novel form of interaction between a man and a woman. Before they knew it, they had finished reading the book with a yellowish cover. Adam and Eve looked at each other, and a peculiar atmosphere began to spread throughout the room. Eve's face was as red as a seductive apple, and she was completely oblivious to the fact that she was being seduced. However, Adam saw this, and he swallowed before speaking in a hesitant manner. How about we give it a try? Let's try. Eve replied in a voice as soft as a mosquito. We're all reading books that combine theory and practice anyway. Now that we've learned the theory, we naturally have to practice as well. When Adam heard that, he immediately felt that it made sense. They had sacrificed themselves for the sake of great knowledge. Since they had learned it, they naturally had to put it into practice. They weren't doing anything strange. Adam's nervousness was greatly relieved by this thought, and he took off the clothes that God had given him and slowly began to take off the clothes of Eve. Her jade-white and exquisite body was exposed in front of Adam, causing his body to instinctively react. It was a very strange reaction. Eve blushed all the way to her ears at the sight of Adam. but her eyes were shimmering with a seductive light. "Let's start from the first page," Adam said with a serious expression as he wrapped his arm around Eve's slender waist. "All right." Eve nodded in agreement. Adam carefully rubbed Eve's two soft, snowy mounds, and the cherry at the center of the mounds was also gently touched by Adam, eliciting a series of soft moans from Eve. Adam also kissed Eve's soft, pink lips and sucked on them with all his heart. The two of them became more and more passionate, and they had already reached a point where they couldn't control themselves anymore. They were completely relying on their instinctive reactions. Finally, Adam entered Eve's body. Eve suddenly let loose a pained cry as tears welled up in her eyes. Adam was given a massive fright, and he almost wilted from fright. "What's wrong? It hurts. Why does it hurt so much?" Wasn't the woman in the painting supposed to be very happy? Eve's brows furrowed. Adam looked down to find that he was bleeding, and his legs gave out from under him as tears began to flow down his face. "Eve, I'm sorry, it's all my fault. I made you bleed." Eve's features paled slightly as she looked down, but she still gritted her teeth in the end. "It's all right, Adam. Let's continue. I think I can still hold on." "Really?" Adam was a little intimidated. "I know what that thing is. It's already broken anyway, so it's all right." A comforting smile appeared on Eve's face, and her smile became even more alluring. Adam couldn't help but pounce toward her again. For the sake of knowledge, for the sake of learning, they were willing to be fearless, even if they had to bleed. Both Eve and Adam were touched by their own spirit. After that, they engaged in a series of intense and passionate practical activities. As the saying went, hoeing rice at noon, and sweat dripped down into the soil. Who would have thought that every grain of rice would be eaten in the shade? Eve's long and slender legs were wrapped around Adam's waist, and her breathing was rapid and ragged. Adam's waist was slender, and his hands were light as he strummed a zither. Eve gradually entered a state of euphoria, and the spring tides were even as the bright moon rose above the sea. Adam became more and more courageous as the battle progressed. Silver bottles were broken, and water gushed forth. In the end, the two of them reached a state of great harmony, and they experienced the blissful moment of learning. Adam and Eve hugged one another, panting heavily as they looked at one another with a smile. "I feel like we didn't do enough practice. We didn't even get to try the last few pages of the book." Adam was a little disappointed. "It's all right. We can continue tomorrow." Eve's face was flushed with excitement. This was the first time she had felt that learning could be so exciting and special. Adam was silent for a moment before replying. "How can learning be delayed? Waiting for tomorrow is a waste of time. I can still continue." "Huh? We're going again?" Eve was surprised. "Learning? Are you scared?" A faint smile appeared on Adam's face. "Oomph. Who's scared? Let's continue." Eve was not convinced. Thus, the two of them engaged in a battle again. Outside the library, Tina's fair and delicate face blushed when she saw this. She spat and said in a charming voice, "How shameless." And Lynn's lips twitched upon hearing this. Who was it that had just witnessed the entire battle in shock and fury? He had initially wanted to protect the purity of the little fairy's heart and prevent Tina from witnessing that scene. However, Tina turned him down with a righteous expression. She was only concerned about the development of the human race. She was clearly enjoying herself now, but she was scolding Adam and Eve for being shameless. Adam and Eve were also quite pitiful. This was clearly a normal interaction between a man and a woman, but they were scolded by the so-called God. To be honest, Lynn was also quite envious and displeased. He had lived for over 20 years, but he had never experienced something like this before. How could Adam and Eve have experienced something like this before him? Sigh, if everything went according to plan, he would probably have to endure for over 90 years. With this in mind, Lynn was struck by a sense of sorrow. Just like that, the Adam and Eve of this world had accomplished the first feat in human history. This was not because of the forbidden fruit. Instead, it was because a yellowed book. Chapter 631. Adam and Eve had always been very close to each other, so it wasn't surprising that an erotic book had opened the door to a whole new world for them. As the saying went, The meeting of the golden wind and the jade dew was far more beautiful than anything else in this world. The two of them had only progressed from being close friends to lovers, but their lifestyle didn't change much. The only difference was that they now had the opportunity to read a porn book. The two of them continued to read, learn, and practice in the library. They were both very good at learning, and Lynn felt like this was how humans should be. Adam and Eve found seeds in the granary and tried to sow all types of crops. They also didn't eat fruits all day long. Instead, they found a kitchen and cooked their own food. That was the first time they tasted cooked food. They also knew how to use tools to cut down the surrounding trees to make all types of wooden products. Later on, they found out that what was recorded in the little yellow book should be the legendary sexual intercourse. The two of them naturally became husband and wife, but they didn't know how to perform the wedding ceremony. They were the only two people left in this world, and they had no parents. Also, all of the people mentioned in the book had disappeared, so they really couldn't perform the wedding ceremony. Adam, do you think our parents were the ones who held us when we were born? He was looking at biological genetics, which actually explained the principle that close relatives could not marry from a hereditary point of view. If their parents were the same and they were brother and sister, then they would be in big trouble. With this in mind, Eve turned to the man beside her with a nervous expression. That's impossible, Eve. Have you forgotten the scene in our dream? That woman had golden wings, and her hair was also golden. She was from a completely different race than us. And that man wasn't even as handsome as me. From a genetic perspective, how could they have given birth to perfect people like me and you? Adam was holding a book on genetic transmission in his hands as he spoke in a calm and collected manner. Outside the library, and Lynn immediately rolled up his sleeves and was about to charge in and beat someone up. I'm not as handsome as you. Today, I will let you know why flowers are so red. However, Tina stopped him with a smile. Giant and Lynn, Adam is right. He really is more handsome than you. Handsome? And Lynn was exasperated. He glanced at Adam's handsome face in the library pavilion and said angrily, "Handsome my ass. He doesn't have my temperament. In this world, temperament is the most important." But he only said that he's more handsome than you. He didn't say that he has a better temperament than you. Why are you so angry? Tina blinked her beautiful eyes as she looked at Lynn, and Lynn faltered slightly upon hearing this. That's right. Why am I so angry? Wait, something doesn't seem right. Time continued to accelerate, and Adam and Eve learned more and more knowledge. Before long, Eve began to conceive, and Adam took on the role of a good husband. After 10 months of pregnancy, she gave birth in one day. Adam was busy delivering a baby. He had the theoretical knowledge, but it was his first time putting it into practice. Finally, this world welcomed its first natural human being, and it was a boy. Wah! Adam, it hurts so much. I didn't think that giving birth would be so difficult. Can we not have any more children in the future? Eve sobbed as she spoke. All right, I'll listen to you. Adam nodded with a firm expression. His heart was actually aching for Eve at the sight of her sobbing. Adam loved Eve, so he didn't want her to suffer like this anymore. And Lynn and Tina were both extremely nervous upon hearing this. Calm down, you guys. If they didn't continue to give birth, the human race was going to go extinct. Adam, let me hold the baby, Eve said in a feeble voice. Adam hesitated momentarily before placing the baby in Eve's arms. Eve held the baby in her arms, and a warm smile appeared on her face as she listened to the baby's crisp cries. The gloomy expression on her face instantly disappeared, and she appeared to be a lot more radiant and enchanting. Adam, this baby is so cute. Let's have more children in the future. Eve smiled. Huh? Adam faltered slightly upon hearing this, and he nodded at the sight of Eve's serious expression. All right, I'll listen to you. However, he was grumbling internally. Are women always so fickle? And Lynn and Tina heaved a collective sigh of relief upon hearing this. The threat of the human race going extinct had finally been averted. Adam, look at this baby. This is what a newborn baby looks like in the books. A perplexed expression suddenly appeared on Eve's face. But I think back to when we were born, we were already very big, and we didn't look like this baby at all. Why is that? Perhaps. Adam couldn't think of a reason either, so he gave a perfunctory reply. Perhaps we're special. We're life bestowed upon us by the heavens, and we're mighty beings. Eve was quite amused by Adam's words, and she was able to set aside her doubts for now. Time flew by. Soon, Eve gave birth to 9 children, 5 boys and 4 girls. After that, Eve and Adam were unable to have any more children no matter how hard they tried. Tina wasn't the one who had interfered in this matter. She wanted nothing more than for Eve to have more children. This was most likely the will of the heavens. The 9 children formed 4 pairs of couples, and one of them was a bachelor. Eve was a little concerned. She still remembered that it was stated in a book that close relatives were not allowed to marry. However, that mysterious woman had recently appeared in her dreams and told her that she had already eliminated the negative effects of inbreeding, but she didn't know whether that was true or not. In the end, Adam discovered a strange book in one of the compartments of the library. There was a line of golden text on the cover of the book, Great Purity Body, Refinement Mantra. After flipping through the book, his expression turned pale with fright. He had finally found the legendary cultivation method. This was the cultivation method that could allow one to ascend to immortality. The cultivation method that was mentioned in countless books. From then on, the human race finally embarked on the path of cultivation. In other parts of the world, the 9 tribes had already slowly figured out a way to enhance themselves through cultivation. Almost all of them could cultivate, and powerful beings of the spirit-nurturing stage also began to appear. The dinosaurs were once the rulers of the world, but they were already beginning to doubt their very existence, and their sphere of influence was on the wane. They had once ruled over the sea, land, and air, but they were now forced to live in places where vital energy was not as abundant, and they became the trial targets of the 9 tribes. This was truly a pitiful change. They began to discover that aside from their slightly more muscular bodies, they didn't seem to have any other strengths. Among the 9 tribes, the Dragon tribe, the Dark-Winged tribe, and the true demons began to develop complacency. They thought that they were invincible, and there was no point in fighting the dinosaurs anymore, so they began to look elsewhere. Due to some conflicts, the tribes began to tear each other apart. In the end, conflict erupted, and a war broke out between the 9 tribes. Look at how smug they are. Do they really think they're invincible? Tina pursed her lips with displeasure on her face. It was quite clear that she was very disdainful toward these disharmonious battles. That's not a bad idea. The more battles they fight, the more breakthroughs they'll make. And Lin didn't really mind as he spoke with a smile. They love battles so much. Tina's lips curled up into a smile. Then I'll let them fight to their heart's content. A sense of foreboding welled up in Lin's heart. What do you want to do? Aren't they bored out of their minds? Then I'll create an antagonist for them. Tina chuckled. Chapter 632. Create a supervillain? And Lin stared blankly at Tina before coming to a realization. She was the big boss of this world, the kind of big boss who could do whatever she wanted, so creating a supervillain didn't seem like a big deal to her. How do you plan to do it? And Lin couldn't help but ask. I haven't thought about it yet. I can't create highly intelligent creatures. Tina tapped her chin with a thoughtful expression. However, we can use the resources of this world to create monsters that are more powerful and stupid. Do you have any good ideas? And Lin was naturally very excited to be able to participate in the grand undertaking of creating villains, and he also began to ponder the matter. He thought for a moment before replying. As villains, they have to have a source, a reason, and a goal. That's easy. The source would be a gate of hell in the northern part of this world, and the villains would come out from there. As long as the 9 tribes seal the gate of hell, they'll be able to win the war. Tina smiled. As for the reason and goal, Tina fell silent, as if she was trying to think of a good reason. She pondered for a moment before suggesting, how about we make it so that the other world is about to be destroyed, so they can only choose to come over and conquer this world? No, that's too perfunctory. Besides, conquering the world is too cliché, and it'll also destroy the environment. And Lin immediately shook his head in rejection. Why don't we make the villains hunters of highly intelligent life forms? They belong to some kind of cosmic tribe that can absorb the power of highly intelligent life forms to enhance their own power. They come from the stars in order to devour all of the highly intelligent life forms in this world in order to become more powerful. This kind of strengthening ability can avoid the tragedy of dinosaurs being too stupid and have limitless potential. Furthermore, they won't destroy the environment for no reason, which is perfect for a supervillain. Tina nodded in agreement and gave Enlin a thumbs up. Very good, let's do that. Enlin's interest was piqued. As for the name, let's call them spirit-engulfing beasts. Then, the initial power level was set to be around the 5th stage Tao body, with the most powerful being not exceeding the spirit-nurturing intermediate stage. The extent to which one's power increased was related to the strength of the highly intelligent beings they devoured. Reproduction is the most important, as it will directly affect the balance of power. As for appearance as an antagonist, of course I have to be darker. It's best if I have claws and a big mouth. My spells also have to be dark and bloody. It's not good to be too bright. Tina nodded in response to Enlin's suggestions and didn't refuse any of them. As long as Master was happy, she was the boss of this world. If she wasn't happy with the villains, she could always create more in the future. This spirit-engulfing beast would be her first lab rat. Not long after, in the northernmost region of Tina's world. Rumble. As the earth quaked and the mountains swayed, a pitch-black gate that was over 1,000 feet tall appeared in this world. An evil aura spread out from within, turning the land within a radius of 1,000 feet into black soil. The life force of all living beings was instantly sucked dry. Then, a large group of black, strangely shaped monsters ran out, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Wah! Howl! Howl! Bye-bye. I want to eat. I want to eat those smart brains. Let's go. I heard there are brains to eat in the south. A horde of inky black monsters emerged from the gate of hell, and there were over 10,000 of them. All of them rushed toward the south in groups with expressions of villains on their faces. Furthermore, you're not mistaken. They can all communicate in simple language. This was already the limit of Tina's IQ boost. The supervillains, the spirit-engulfing beasts, had finally stepped onto the stage of this world. Giant and Lin, I'm really tired from creating things out of thin air this time. I might need to rest for a while. Tina's eyes were misty as she wrapped an arm around Lin's arm and placed it on his shoulder as she spoke in a mellow voice. Tina had created all of these things out of thin air, so it naturally required a lot of energy to do so. Furthermore, she had accelerated time for so long, so it was only natural that she was feeling exhausted. And Lin could feel the soft and warm sensation on Tina's arm, then looked at her struggling expression, and he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. So even the heavens could be this tired. And Lin was not displeased in the slightest by seeing Tina like this. Instead, he felt a lot more reassured. Then let's go back and rest. And Lin smiled. All right, Giant and Lin. Tina had been waiting for Enlin to say this. She waved a hand, and the two of them disappeared from this world at the same time. Enlin opened his eyes and was greeted by the sight of his familiar bedroom. Tina yawned before swallowing a blood spirit pill. Don't tempt me with delicious food. Let me wake up on my own. She flew over to Enlin's pillow as she spoke, pulled up the blanket, and fell into a deep sleep. Enlin wasn't all that tired, so he decided not to sleep for now. He had to ask Xiao Hong how many days had passed. Xiao Hong, stop singing. Hurry up and tell me how many days have passed. Enlin picked up a little red flower with a curious expression. Xiao Hong's singing had been interrupted, and she glared at Enlin. It's already been 7 days. Enlin nodded. A thought then occurred to him, and he yelled, Holy F***CK. You're holding a flower, not a blade of grass. Xiao Hong corrected with a disdainful expression. Enlin was in no mood to bicker with Xiao Hong. He remembered that the end-of-term examinations were commencing today, and he couldn't give up on this opportunity. His underlings were still waiting for him in the dark marshlands. With this in mind, Enlin immediately activated his voice transmission talisman and sent a message to all of his beast pets and disciples. I'm going to the dark marshlands to fight the blood tribe. Those of you who want to go, hurry up and sign up. I'll only give you 10 minutes to think about it. Dark marshlands? I haven't been away from home for a long time. I want to go woof. Dubai was the first to reply. As expected of true love, and Lin was very pleased. I'm not going. I heard that the sunlight there isn't very good, and it stinks. Xiao Hong shook her red head with a lazy expression. And Lin wasn't expecting her to go anyway, so he wasn't moved in the slightest. Master, are you finally going to conquer the world? It's a pity that I'm at a critical juncture in helping Shui Zhantian make a breakthrough, so I can't get away. The white-scale wolf god sighed with a forlorn expression. Master, can you take me with you when my fur is as sharp as a knife? Shui Zhantian offered. On Lin, it looked like the two of them couldn't find the time either. Also, what the hell was this about his fur being as sharp as a knife? Master, I want to go. Xiao Zhe's excited voice sounded. Big brother, and I haven't been active in a long time either. I want to go this time as well. Xiao Chao's voice sounded. All right, the members were confirmed. Dubai, Xiao Zhe, Xiao Cho, and Tina. Tina didn't say anything. Why did she have to go? If she didn't say anything, it would mean that she was agreeing. A gratified smile appeared on Lin's face. This was a very complete lineup. He spoke into the voice transmission talisman. All right, go home and gather. We're going to the Dark Marshlands together. Chapter 633. The Dark Marshlands bordered the Kingdom of the Nine States and was located in the southwest region of the Kingdom of the Nine States, only about 150 kilometers away from the Gem State. And Lin contacted Su Xiaolan through the sound-transmitting talisman and learned that their class had arrived at Gem State. Su Xiaolan found an excuse for Lin, saying that he was in seclusion for a major breakthrough in his realm. After knowing the situation, the head teacher acquiesced to his request for leave. After all, the school was very tolerant of such situations. And Lin summoned Dubai, Xiao Zhe, and Xiao Cho. Then, he carefully wrapped Tina in a small quilt and held her in his arms. Then, he flew into the sky on his dog. He wanted to teleport to Gem State through the school's teleportation array. The Gem Province was a place worthy of reminiscence. In the past, he and Su Xiaolan had met again in Xixia City of the Gem State, and Su Xiaolan had become Dao companions. There, they had spent the ordinary time together, and there were also the amazing Nirvana rebirth of Su Xiaolan. Many beautiful and unforgettable memories were there. The place Lin was headed to was Huang Quan City of the Gem State. It was a place that was completely different from the peaceful Xixia City. It was a place that was filled with blood and slaughter, and battles between the Blood Tribe and human armies were frequent. It was one of the most intense battlefields between the Kingdom of the Nine States and the Dark Marshlands. As for the war between the Blood Tribe and the Kingdom of the Nine States, the Blood Tribe was definitely going to take the blame. If it weren't for the fact that the vampires couldn't control their impulses and liked to drink large amounts of human blood, humans wouldn't have fought the vampires. Many human cities have been destroyed by the blood breeds. In the eyes of humans, the blood breeds were demons in human skin. Of course, the vampires weren't just targeting humans, but all highly intelligent life forms as well. Yes, the blood of all highly intelligent life forms was the target of the Blood Tribe's consumption. They were like addicts who couldn't stop sucking blood. Even if they had to pay with their lives, they would struggle endlessly. To be honest, even Lin felt like it was a miracle that the Blood Tribe was still alive on the Taichu continent. Their vitality was especially strong, so it was not easy to kill them all. This might be one of the reasons. Another reason was that their territory was too dirty. The deeper one went into the Dark Marshlands, the more corrosive it would be to living beings. It was said that the core region could even corrode the Tao of all creation. Even Tao integration stage true gods were extremely disdainful of such a terrifying place. Perhaps it was because of this geographical advantage that they were able to do as they pleased. In Yellow Spring City, there was an extremely majestic city wall that stretched endlessly on the Black Land. The surface of the city wall was covered with white, solid mercury. Under the sunlight, it shone with a strange radiance. It was like an incomparably huge silver waterfall that divided the heavens and the earth. It was extremely spectacular and beautiful. It was said that the mercury, which had been enhanced by immortal spells, could suppress the power of the weaker blood clan to a certain extent. Otherwise, they wouldn't have built such a thing on such a large scale. In the sky, a huge white dog broke through the clouds and gazed at the majestic city from afar, clicking its tongue in wonder. Even Xiao Chou couldn't help but exclaim, "Big brother, and the place we're going to protect this time is a lot more majestic than the dingin' city we went to 2 years ago." Of course, in the past, we were dealing with brainless mutant beasts, but now, we're dealing with highly intelligent and ferocious mosquitoes. Lin replied with a matter-of-fact expression, "Big brother, and don't you have a few underlings here? When are you going to call them out?" "Woof," Dabai interjected with an excited expression. "Them? Let's just leave them be for now." An expectant expression appeared on Lin's face as he said, "Cassidy is the sect leader of the Ling Shui sect. Merlin is the palace leader of the Soul Blood Palace. And Tobias is the Grand Elder of the Blood Tribe Divine Disc League. All of them have first-rate Blood Tribe forces under their command. It's not a good idea to call them out on our own, so we have to play it by ear." And Lin knew that he couldn't allow them to give themselves away in a situation like this. Some things had to be planned out slowly. Big brother, and Lin was riding on Dubai's back as he flew through the air. At this moment, there were already a few students on the city wall waving their hands excitedly. There was a beautiful young woman with short black hair, a burly man, a scholarly-looking man waving a fan, and a busted woman. And Lin was greeted by the familiar faces of his old teammates, and he waved with a smile. "Hey, long time no see. Miao Tian, Luo Zipping, Zhong Yongyan, Sun Xinglian." Dabai landed on the city wall with a majestic expression. Miao Tian ran over to Dabai with a dainty smile and stroked Dabai's head. "Dabai, it's been a long time since I've eaten stuffed buns that you ignored. Do you still have any?" "Yes, 10,000 spirit stones per steamer, woof." Dabai snapped. Miao Tian pursed her lips. "So stingy. Big brother, and you haven't come to class for so long. What are you busy with?" Zhong Yongyan waved his fan with a graceful demeanor. An enigmatic smile appeared on Lin's face. "As for me, I'm busy creating a world, of course." "Creating a world?" Everyone instantly fell silent as they stared at Lin with wide eyes. "Big brother, and I still want to ask, what do you mean by creating a world?" Luo Zipping couldn't help but ask. He felt like he might have misunderstood this term, so he wanted to confirm it again. "It means exactly what it says. I'm creating a world." And Lin nodded with a solemn expression. Gasp! The four of them drew a sharp intake of breath as they stared at the man in front of them with shock and reverence. A man who could create a world. So bad *SS. And Lin was just about to continue gloating when a pleasant voice suddenly sounded from behind him. "And Lin, you still know to come over?" He turned around to find a lithe and graceful woman with skin as fair as suet jade looking at him with a hint of a smile on her face. And Lin's enigmatic expression instantly disappeared as he inched closer to the woman with a fawning expression. "Celestial Maiden Xiaolan, you're already here. How could I not come over? Let me explain." Miao Tian and the others were just beginning to feel a strong sense of reverence toward Lin, but now they saw the man they revered inching closer to Su Xiaolan with a fawning expression on his face. The image of him in their hearts began to crumble. Big brother has changed. Zhong Yongyan shook his head and sighed. Henpecked, Miao Tian rolled her eyes. Luo Zipping scratched his head. Are we still following him? A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Besides, Big brother didn't starve to death. He's just a little timid in front of classmate Xiaolan. Sun Xinglian spoke in a cold voice. After a short discussion, the four of them decided to continue following Lin. During their first year in university, they were fortunate enough to latch onto Lin's coattails and did very well, even receiving the inheritance of the Purple Star Ruins. Now, they had all progressed to the spirit nurturing stage and were ranked in the top 30 on the Immortal Rankings board. Even though this had something to do with their aptitude, it was undeniable that Lin also had a lot to do with them. Hence, they were determined to latch onto Big Brother and's coattails this time. Chapter 634. The central region of the dark marshlands was different from the perilous Black Earth continent. This place was different from what many people imagined it to be. It was described by outsiders as the most terrifying and vile place in the world, but it was as mesmerizing as a holy land. White cranes flew above this holy land, chirping joyfully in the blue sky. Divine mountains over 10,000 feet tall rose from the ground and pierced into the clouds. Spiritual ripples surged through the air. Rare spirit beasts roamed the divine mountains, and all kinds of spirit flowers and spirit medicines bloomed on the ground. They glowed brilliantly and decorated the earth with a vibrant array of colors. Countless waterfalls flowed down from the divine mountains like silver dragons, shaking the heavens. Vital energy lingered here like white silk, dazzling and elegant. Iridescent light flowed in the sky, creating a beautiful scene. Anyone who came to this place would be stunned by this immortal atmosphere. They would never believe that such a holy and majestic scene could appear in such a vile place. At the peak of the tallest divine mountain, there were no sharp peaks. Instead, there was only a peak that looked as if it had been sliced by a heavenly sword. At the very center of the peak, there was a statue that was over 1,000 feet tall and was completely red. The statue was of a handsome, scholarly man. He held a book in his right hand and a skull in his left hand. It was a rather strange sight. However, it was precisely this slightly strange man who had a frighteningly powerful identity. This was because he was the Blood Tribe Patriarch, the most supreme being of the Blood Tribe. At this moment, there were 36 beings with extremely terrifying auras standing before the statue of the Blood Tribe Patriarch. All of them had golden hair and crimson eyes. They wore red robes and wore solemn expressions. Only these supreme beings who had already reached the return to void stage had the right to stand at the peak of the divine mountain. Huge rocks floated in the air around the peak of the divine mountain. They were like small, flat continents. Standing on top of these rocks were powerful beings of the Blood Tribe in black robes. There were over 100,000 of them. Once this force was mobilized, they could even flatten any first-rate power on the continent. Right now, most of the most powerful beings of the Dark Marshlands had gathered here because they were about to hold a sacred ceremony to determine the holy disciple of the Blood Tribe. The holy disciples of the Blood Tribe possessed an extremely revered status. In fact, their status was on par with that of the Blood Tribe's Tao integration stage mighty figures. In fact, the amount of authority and resources they possessed even surpassed that of the Blood Tribe's Tao integration stage mighty figures. There was no other reason than that he was the inheritor of the Blood Ancestors' power. Emperor Yi Deng stood beside the statue of the Blood Patriarch, and he looked at the 36 holy disciple candidates with a profound gaze. There seemed to be a boundless sea of blood surging behind him. Those who were slightly weaker would fall into madness as if they were being devoured by thousands of demons just by looking at him. Thus, apart from the 36 Blood Tribe return to void stage mighty figures, the hundreds of thousands of Blood Tribe cultivators standing on the floating rocks all instinctively avoided Emperor Yi Deng's gaze. Hey, who do you guys think will win the Holy Disciple selection this time? A black-robed Blood Tribe member asked in a low voice. Who else could it be? Emperor Yi Deng's son, Layden. He was a super mighty figure at the return to void pinnacle stage. Apparently, the higher one's cultivation base is, the more the Blood Patriarch appreciates their bloodline. As such, the holy disciple of the Blood Tribe has to be Layden. A black-robed Blood Tribe female looked up at a handsome man standing at the summit of the divine mountain with a scorching expression as she spoke without hesitation. Another male beside her disagreed. If we're comparing cultivation bases, Layden is still far from the top. Ada is an experienced cultivator at the return to void pinnacle stage, and I've heard that her Tao is already extremely clear. She's only half a step away from the Tao integration stage. Her chances of becoming the holy disciple are even greater than Layden's. What do you know? Layden's blood is clearly purer. Who was the one who said that the higher one's cultivation base is, the more the Blood Patriarch appreciates their bloodline? Why are you talking about the purity of one's blood now? That's right. Have you tasted it before? Judging from your expression, you've probably tasted it before. Haha, you guys. The female gritted her teeth in rage at the ridicule she was receiving. The entire place was instantly filled with a joyous atmosphere. Similar discussions were taking place elsewhere as well. However, most of the discussions were focused on Yi Deng and Ada. Regardless of whether it was their cultivation bases or the power of their bloodlines, they were the most powerful among all the candidates. Thus, they became the hot topic of discussion. Emperor Yi Deng also turned to look at his son, and his gaze swept past him. His gaze appeared to be nonchalant, but his heart was filled with anticipation. If Layden really did receive the acknowledgement of the Blood Patriarch, then it would only be a matter of time before he became his equal. In fact, there was even a chance that Layden would surpass him. When that time came, the father and son would be able to unite and dominate the entire continent. They would definitely be able to push the Blood Tribe to new heights and become a legend that would be passed down for countless years to come. Emperor Yi Deng was getting a little excited just thinking about this. He had been waiting for this day for a long time. Layden was actually even more excited. His only opponent right now was Ada. Ada's cultivation base was higher than his, but he had a good father. His father's bloodline was extremely pure, and he even possessed the bloodline of the Blood Patriarch. Thus, his bloodline wouldn't be too bad either. At the very least, his bloodline was related to the Blood Patriarchs. This meant that he had a natural advantage over Ada. Thus, he had the highest chance of winning. As for the other Blood Tribe returned to Void Stage Mighty Figures, they were just there to accompany him. Their objective here was to highlight his strength, to highlight his position at the pinnacle among all the experts. Among the 36 Blood Tribe Mighty Figures, there were 3 that Enlin was very familiar with. They were Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias. Cassidy wore a bored expression as she stared up into the sky with her bright crimson eyes. If this were in the past, she would most likely be looking up at Layden with reverence. After all, Layden was such an exceptional talent among the Blood Tribe. However, Layden was less attractive to her than a drop of her master's blood. Her mind was filled with thoughts of her master, Holy Blood. Sigh, I wonder when I'll be able to see her master again. Cassidy's exquisitely beautiful features were filled with melancholy, and those who didn't know her would think that her lovesickness was acting up again. However, in reality, she was suffering from a blood addiction. If it weren't for the fact that this holy disciple confirmation ceremony was a mandatory ceremony for all Blood Tribe Mighty Figures who didn't have a special mission, she wouldn't have come here to join in on the fun. Merlin and Tobias were also quite displeased. They had already received news that their master was coming to the Dark Marshlands, and their morale was already very high. They wanted to exchange their battle accolades for holy blood, so they didn't want to waste their time here. In the sky above, a certain nomological chain suddenly snapped. Boom! A gargantuan crimson vortex began to engulf the entire sky. It was boundlessly deep, and it was capable of drawing one's soul into it. All of the Blood Tribe cultivators, regardless of whether they were black-robed or red-robed Blood Tribe Mighty Figures, felt as if their minds were about to be sucked into the crimson vortex in the sky. A Tao Integration Stage Mighty Figure, enshrouded in a divine light, emerged from the vortex before nodding at Emperor Yi Deng. Emperor Yi Deng nodded with a smile before waving a hand through the air. The Blood Tribe Holy Disciple Selection begins now. Chapter 635. Emperor Yi Deng announced the commencement of the Holy Disciple Selection, and everyone fell silent. This was the most sacred moment. If they still dared to whisper to each other, then they should be prepared to be slapped to death by the Tao Integration Stage Yi Deng. Blood Patriarch, please select the next Holy Disciple. Emperor Yi Deng spoke with a solemn expression. The Blood Tribe Tao Integration Stage Mighty Figure in the sky produced an extremely black drop of blood from a black vial. As soon as the blood appeared, an extremely terrifying aura began to spread, as if it was going to crush the heavens and earth. All of the Blood Tribe members felt as if a supreme being was looking down on them. The absolute suppression of the primordial bloodline and the absolute suppression of the realm caused them to lower their heads deeply. They didn't even have the courage to raise their heads. Without a doubt, that was the blood of the blood ancestor. Go! Up in the sky, the blood tribe mighty figure standing proudly in the center of the blood-colored vortex flicked his finger, and the blood ancestor's blood flew toward the glass-like statue before finally landing between the man's eyebrows. Rumble. There was another slight tremor, and a special aura began to spread. The pressure from the bloodline began to disappear, and everyone felt their bodies relax. They looked up at the statue of the blood ancestor and found that the statue seemed to be alive. It was exuding a strong vitality. Junior E. Deng humbly requests the blood patriarch to nominate the next holy disciple of the blood tribe. E. Deng bowed. All 36 blood tribe mighty figures cut their fingers at the same time and let a drop of their blood float in the air, awaiting the blood ancestor's choice. Hundreds of thousands of blood tribe experts also watched the scene unfold on the summit of the divine mountain with bated breath. Most of the blood tribe cultivators had their eyes fixed on Ada and Layden's blood. They wanted to see which of their blood would win the blood patriarch's favor. That's right. As long as the blood ancestor activated a drop of blood, he would become the next blood race's holy son. As for the previous generation's blood race, holy son, he was the supreme being of the Tao integration stage in the center of the blood-colored vortex. His name was Emperor Meng. It had been 100,000 years since he had been elected as the blood race's holy son. It had been such a long time since he had the chance to hold this ceremony again. One could imagine just how high the status of a holy son was. It was very likely that the current holy disciple would become the next Tao integration stage mighty figure of the blood tribe, and the holy disciples would be born from Layden and Ada. The red glass statue moved. Even though it was moving very slowly, it tugged at everyone's heartstrings. Even Emperor E. Deng was staring at the statue with a nervous expression. The blood ancestor raised the skull and pointed it in a certain direction. Layden drew a sharp intake of breath upon seeing this. Even though he maintained a calm and collected expression on his face, his heart was filled with ecstasy. A hint of disappointment appeared on Ada's face, and she sighed softly. She and Layden stood in different directions in the crowd, but the skull was pointing in Layden's direction. The remaining hundreds of thousands of blood tribe members all had different expressions on their faces. Some revealed looks of joy, some sighed inwardly, and some sighed in sorrow. Without a doubt, the dust had settled. A red glow flashed across the skull, and the fresh blood was drawn under the gaze of many blood breeds. Before Layden even had a chance to put on a victorious smile, his eyes and mouth began to slowly widen. The expressions of the hundreds of thousands of blood tribe members also congealed on their faces, as if they had seen a ghost. 3 drops of blood slowly flew toward the blood ancestor statue before landing in the blood ancestor's mouth. A human-like smile of satisfaction appeared on the blood ancestor's face, and it even smacked its lips before slowly putting down the skull and reverting back to its original form. Emperor E. Deng was a little dumbstruck, and Emperor Meng was also a little dumbstruck. Ada's eyes widened as she turned toward a certain direction. She wasn't looking at Layden, but at the 3 people standing behind him. Not only her, but all the other blood tribe members also turned toward a certain direction with incredulity etched on their faces. The 3 blood tribe mighty figures who were enjoying the limelight also wore expressions of incredulity and incredulity. These 3 blood tribe mighty figures were none other than Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias. They had thought that they were only here to watch the show. So how had this happened? Layden's breathing accelerated as he looked at the 3 people behind him, and he was unable to maintain his calm any longer. How could it be you? What's going on? The 3 of them were only slightly above average among the 36 blood tribe mighty figures, and only Tobias had a sliver of a chance of being acknowledged by the blood ancestor as a holy disciple. However, the blood of all 3 of them had been absorbed by the blood ancestor at the same time. Who could tell him what the hell was going on? A brilliant red light suddenly erupted from Emperor E. Deng's eyes as he swept his gaze over the area within a radius of over 50 kilometers, but he was unable to detect anything out of the ordinary. An inky black pupil appeared on the back of Emperor Mang's hand, and he stared at the statue of the blood ancestor for a while, but he was still unable to detect anything out of the ordinary. An extremely peculiar silence descended upon the scene. Is there something wrong? After all, 3 drops of blood have been acknowledged by the blood ancestor at the same time. This is something that has never happened in the history of our holy disciple confirmation ceremony, Emperor Deng suddenly said. His words seemed to be directed at Emperor Mang, but at the same time, they were also directed at the tens of thousands of blood tribe cultivators. His words expressed his opinion and his attitude. He was unable to accept this result. The holy disciple possessed an enormous amount of power and resources, so how could he allow 3 people to possess them at the same time? I think this might be an accident. We can hold another Blood Patriarch's holy disciple confirmation ceremony. Emperor Deng finally revealed his true intentions. Cassidy and the others came to their senses, and even though they were enraged, they didn't dare to express it. After all, their status was inferior to Emperor Deng's, so they could only listen to his instructions. The other black-robed blood tribe mighty figures didn't express any particular emotion. At most, they were a little shocked. However, the red-robed blood tribe mighty figures, especially those with cultivation bases higher than Merlin, all began to chime in agreement. A rare glimmer of hope ignited in their hearts. If Merlin, who was only at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage, could become a holy disciple, then why couldn't they? Perhaps this was an opportunity. A hesitant expression appeared on Emperor Mang's face. But the blood of the blood ancestor is extremely precious, and it'll be very costly to hold another ceremony. I'll pay for the blood of the blood ancestor. Emperor Deng gritted his teeth and said. Emperor Deng turned to Layden with an expression of encouragement as he spoke. A father's love was as heavy as a mountain. Layden was extremely touched. This was what a good father should be. Your son definitely won't disappoint you. Chapter 636. Emperor Mang didn't say anything else after hearing Emperor Deng's promise. After all, he was also finding this a little hard to accept. Generally speaking, the Blood Patriarch would only choose the blood of one blood tribe mighty figure. Why did he choose 3 this time? Furthermore, none of the 3 of them were the most powerful. This didn't make any sense. He repressed the confusion in his heart and carefully extracted a drop of extremely black blood from the black vial. This drop of the Blood Patriarch's blood was no less valuable than an immortal tool. Boom! The blood exuded a peerless might, and all of the blood tribe cultivators down below were struck by the urge to kneel down and kowtow. Emperor Mang chanted a spell, and the power of laws of heaven and earth appeared to maintain the vitality of the Blood Patriarch's blood. The drop of blood flew toward the statue of the Blood Patriarch before falling into his glabella. The 36 blood tribe mighty figures released another drop of blood. The previous drop of blood was nullified. This was also what Emperor Deng had requested. Everything had to be restarted. A mysterious aura rippled out as the blood ancestor moved again, raising the skull in its hand. The 36 blood tribe mighty figures all stared at the Blood Patriarch with scorching light in their eyes. Their initial intentions had been transformed into indescribable anticipation. Even Merlin had a chance to become a holy disciple, so why couldn't they? There was a chance. In the end, the skull turned toward Layden again. The blood of Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias trembled violently before flying into the Blood Patriarch's mouth. The Blood Patriarch's eyes narrowed with satisfaction as he smacked his lips. The blood really did seem to be delicious. Only the sound of breathing and incredulity could be heard in the surroundings. Emperor Deng's face convulsed slightly. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. It's still them. It's still them. Layden's vision darkened, and his Tao heart almost crumbled. If it happened once, then it could be explained as a coincidence or an accident. But if it happened twice in a row, then it was a F*** fact. After all, there were 2 blood tribe Tao integration stage mighty figures here, so no one could play any tricks. In other words, there were 3 Blood Tribe holy disciples this time, and they were all candidates that they had never thought of before. Emperor Yi Ding quickly calmed himself down. Even though there were 10,000 alpacas galloping through his heart, a faint smile still appeared on his face. Let us celebrate the birth of a new Blood Tribe holy disciple. Tobias, Cassidy, Merlin, congratulations. And Wong waved a hand through the air, and boundless rainbow light enshrouded Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias. Boundless power of the divine path enveloped their bodies. Dazzling light shot out in all directions, as if they were gods that had descended from the heavens. Yi Ding and Wong had to accept the blood ancestors' choice, even if they had to cry. Congratulations, Saint! Ancestors bless the blood race. Cheers converged into an ocean, erupting on the peak of the divine mountain. The members of the Blood Tribe weren't idiots. The Blood Patriarch had admitted it, and Emperor Yi Ding had spoken. Regardless of his previous identity, the person standing before them was now the most revered holy disciple of the Blood Tribe. The 3 of them were already equivalent to Blood Tribe Dao integration stage mighty figures, so they naturally had to express their sincerity at a time like this. Cheers and celebratory cries erupted into the heavens. A faint smile appeared on the faces of Cassidy, Merlin, and Tobias as everyone looked on. They had only come with the intention to be bystanders, but who would have thought that they would all receive the acknowledgement of the Blood Patriarch? This was a massive surprise for them. They were well aware of what it meant to become a holy disciple. Not only did it mean a rise in status, but it also meant limitless resources and opportunities. This was an opportunity for them to soar into the heavens. They had already anticipated this outcome a long time ago. It wasn't hard to find a common ground. If the 3 of them were related in any way, it would be because of their master. That was the power of the holy blood. Thus, Enlin's 3 servants became the holy disciples of the Blood Patriarch under the witness of hundreds of thousands of Blood Tribe mighty figures. The shocking news of the 3 of them becoming holy disciples at the same time would definitely sweep through the entire Dark Marshlands and even the entire Tai Chu continent in a very short time. Within a certain Blood Tribe city in the Dark Marshlands, 100 students had broken through the city gate. Enlin rode on Bai's back as they flew over the city wall. He slashed his sword through the air, and a black sword projection sliced the massive city gate in half. A dozen or so Blood Tribe soldiers were also reduced to dust by the sword projection. They had already received news from their scouts that the Soul Formation Stage City Lord of this Blood Tribe city had suddenly left the city to participate in an important Blood Tribe event. It appeared to be the Holy Disciple Ceremony, and he had already left the city. Without their most powerful beings present, they were naturally going to raze this city to the ground. In reality, even if the City Lord was present, Enlin and the others would still be able to raze this city to the ground. Battle cries shook heaven and earth as countless spell techniques clashed on the city wall, creating bursts of dazzling light. Perhaps it was because of the commotion, but Tina, who was lying in Enlin's arms, finally woke up. She looked at Enlin with a confused expression on her face. She then looked down at the battle taking place on the ground, upon which a dazed expression appeared on her face. "Giant Enlin, where are we?" "The Dark Marshlands," Enlin replied with a smile. "Tina, why are we here when we wake up? Are we going to find Little Ku and the others?" "No, it's just the end of semester exam. You can go back to sleep if you're tired," Enlin replied in a gentle voice. Tina pursed her lips. "You're clearly trying to wake me up through the sounds of battle. You're doing this on purpose." At this moment, the students in their class had already broken through the Blood Tribe Army's defensive line and successfully entered the city. The most powerful general had already been sliced in half by Su Qianyun's moonlight disk. The extremely powerful power of the moon had also severed the Blood Tribe general's life force, and he was completely and utterly dead. The city gate had been broken, and the general had been slain. Even though there were only a small group of students, their combat prowess was extremely terrifying. The Blood Tribe army was quickly routed, and they fled in all directions. The flying sword god swung his long sword through the air, upon which a brilliant light erupted from his immortal sword before splitting into 1,000 streaks of white light that chased after the fleeing Blood Tribe soldiers, completely annihilating them. This was a battle between two races, and the homeroom teacher had to participate in the battle as well, so he couldn't hold back in the slightest. Lu Zhan flew to the central region of the city, where there was a red crystal-like barrier, within which was a churning blood pond. The blood pond was the core of a Blood Tribe city. When there were no living beings to feed on, the Blood Tribe relied on the energy within the blood pond to survive. When the blood pond of the city was completely destroyed, it signified the destruction of the city. Dazzling lightning revolved around Lu Zhan's hand before converging to form a gargantuan ball of lightning, which he then hurled toward the red crystal barrier. Boom! Lightning exploded, and the earth tremored violently. The red crystal barrier exploded, and the blood pond within it was also enveloped by boundless lightning before being torn apart and destroyed. After the lightning explosion, the blood pond had been reduced to rubble. All of the students erupted into cheers at the sight of the destruction of the Blood Tribe city. One had to know that destroying a Blood Clan city was already considered a huge achievement. Just this achievement alone was enough for all of the students to receive commendations from the university after the end-of-semester examinations. A gratified smile appeared on the flying sword god's face, and he was just about to gather all of the students when his voice transmission talisman lit up. He picked up the voice transmission talisman, and his expression suddenly faltered slightly upon hearing the news that was being transmitted. Lin, there's new information about the 3 people you're looking for, the flying sword god said in a slow voice. What is it? And Lin immediately became excited upon hearing this, and he immediately flew toward the flying sword god. A large part of the reason why he had come here was because of Cassidy's trio. Dabai was also very curious. He had never seen Lin's 3 servants, and he didn't know who they were. I heard that they've just become the holy disciples of the Blood Tribe. The flying sword god still hadn't recovered from a shock, and his breathing was a little erratic. That's the holy disciple whose status is comparable to that of a Blood Tribe Dao integration stage mighty figure. All 3 of them have become holy disciples. Lin, Chapter 637. Holy Disciple? The holy disciple whose bloodline was acknowledged by the Blood Patriarch? Lin's mouth gaped open, and he didn't know how to react. He naturally knew what it meant to be a holy disciple. The holy disciple was the most recognized and paramount status in the Blood Tribe. They were prodigies who had been acknowledged by the Blood Patriarch and had the right to lead the Blood Tribe to glory. And Lin really didn't expect Cassidy and the others to become holy disciples. Furthermore, all 3 of them had become holy disciples at once. There were actually some Blood Tribe cultivators who were more powerful than them. So why did it have to be the 3 of them? This was like telling a story. If it weren't for the fact that this was coming from their homeroom teacher, and Lin would have slapped them across the face a long time ago. Wasn't this just making fun of him? Homeroom teacher, why did they become holy disciples? And Lin felt like things weren't as simple as they seemed, and he began to speculate. The flying sword god shook his head. I'm not sure either. However, after becoming holy disciples, they most likely had to enter some secret place in the Blood Tribe to reap huge benefits. Perhaps it was some kind of inheritance or some other kind of opportunity. In any case, they won't be able to contact us for now. And Lin wasn't disappointed by this. Instead, he was extremely elated. His 3 underlings had become holy disciples of the Blood Tribe. This was an extremely exhilarating feeling. He couldn't help but fantasize about how unifying the Dark Marshlands was just around the corner. The Blood Tribe city had been completely destroyed, but Lin and the others didn't stop there. Instead, they began to attack another city. There were a total of 13 Blood Tribe cities within 500 kilometers of Huangquan City, and the Flying Sword God was planning to wipe them all out in one fell swoop. Among these 13 cities, 8 of the city lords have gone to participate in the Blood Tribe Holy Disciple Ceremony, and the most powerful among them is at the half-step soul formation stage. 5 of these cities have soul formation stage city lords. Let's split up into 5 teams and sweep through all of them. The flying sword god instructed. Normally, these cities would look after one another, and even if one of them were to be attacked, they would still be able to hold off the students and teachers while waiting for reinforcements from other cities. But now, the lineup of Flying Sword God's class was too strong, and they had the chance to attack all these cities at once. This way, the dozen or so cities would have fewer chances to support each other and escape. Coupled with the lack of top-notch combat power in the cities, this was the perfect opportunity for them to wipe them out in one fell swoop. The Flying Sword God, Su Xiaolan, Xianyuan Cheng, Su Qinyun, the Clown, and Enlin each led a group of students and began to attack the city. As for Xiaoze, the Flying Sword God knew how terrifying his strength was through certain channels. Because of this, Xiaoze was chosen as a mobile member and was on standby at all times. When the team encountered an emergency, he would be able to rush over in time to provide support. The operation to wipe them all out quickly began. Enlin transformed the chaotic alloy brick into a gigantic black brick and carried the 20 noobs toward the city they were going to attack. The Flying Sword God trusted Enlin very much, so he arranged for the weakest student in the class to be assigned to Enlin. This made Enlin quite depressed. But even the weakest student in the first class had a 9th-stage Dao body, which was more powerful than most of the students. Classmate Enlin, what do you want us to do next? A student with a bulky build asked. Should we cheer them on from the side? Or should we cheer them on? A pretty girl asked in a more direct manner. Enlin's chest tightened. What's the difference between cheering them on and cheering them on? Same old. You guys are responsible for attacking the city, and I'll be responsible for taking care of the top-notch powerful beings in the city, as well as the enemies that want to escape. Without experiencing battle, you won't be able to truly grow. Enlin snapped. Their main objective was to destroy the core blood pool of the Blood Tribe city. However, it was equally important to train the students' combat abilities. They couldn't be left lying down for too long. Otherwise, they would be harmed. The students on the black brick were disappointed upon hearing this. However, they quickly composed themselves, and their faces were filled with fighting spirit. A majestic black city appeared before everyone's eyes. A crimson barrier was faintly discernible around it. The Blood Tribe seemed to have heard the news from the destroyed city and had prepared a defensive spell formation in advance. However, this kind of spell formation was really underestimating Enlin's strength. Enlin activated his divine inspection technique and flicked a realm-piercing nail toward the spell formation, instantly shattering it into pieces. The 20 students landed on the city wall and began attacking the Blood Tribe in a frenzy. Lightning crackled on Enlin's fingertips. Whenever he saw a spirit-nurturing stage soldier, he would toss a lightning manipulation technique over, instantly obliterating the Blood Tribe soldier. Right at this moment, an extremely powerful aura was released from within the city. Enlin tilted his head and looked toward the city. He saw a male with a roiling crimson dragon around his body, bringing with him a raging sea of blood. The terrifying corrosive power melted everything within a radius of 1,000 feet. It was as if a demonic god of destruction had descended upon the world. You brats who are still wet behind the ears dare to attack my Shuemang city? You must be tired of living. The male's voice boomed like thunder. Now let me whoosh. A sword strike imbued with the destructive power of golden void, lightning flashed past. It was simply too fast and too powerful. The dazzling golden lightning sword projection instantly tore through the male's domain and tore him in half before he could even introduce himself. The destructive power of golden void, lightning tore through the 2 halves of the male's body. The male didn't even have a chance to regenerate before his life force was severed. Enlin sheathed his evil-slaying sword, a disdainful expression on his face. A mere soul formation initial stage trash dares to flex in front of me. Dabai's body trembled. Big brotherin, you've been so cocky lately. Enlin replied in exasperation. I can't help it. I've been fighting return to void stage mighty figures recently. I can't even be bothered to listen to the lines of a soul formation stage weakling. Dabai, Can't you just have fun? How can I, who hasn't even reached the half-step soul formation stage, endure this? The Blood Tribe soldiers who were in the midst of battle were scared witless when they saw their city lord being insta-killed. They lost all will to fight and began to flee. Although the students were powerful, there were too few of them. If the Blood Tribe wanted to flee, they couldn't keep everyone here. Tina, I'll leave it to you, Lin suddenly said. Tina was sitting on Lin's shoulder and was spectating the battle on the city wall with a bored expression. She nodded obediently upon hearing Lin's words. She waved a hand, and over 10,000 specks of white light began to fill the sky like a sea of stars. Then the stars began to fall. The specks of starlight imbued with a holy and purifying power fell upon the Blood Tribe soldiers. Splat, splat, splat. The white specks of light pierced through the bodies of the Blood Tribe soldiers before exploding. In the blink of an eye, over 10,000 Blood Tribe soldiers had perished. Debai's eyes widened as he looked on, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. So the adorable and obedient fairy who referred to herself as his fifth sister was actually this powerful. The students who were engaged in battle were completely dumbstruck by the sight of their enemies being annihilated in an instant. They looked toward Lin's direction to find an extremely beautiful little fairy whose hands were still glowing faintly. Needless to say, that was naturally the fairy's attack. All of the students looked at Lin with complex expressions. What happened to the battle experience they were promised? They hadn't even fought, and the enemies had been annihilated in a single strike. They were being forced to become nobodies. Chapter 638. Lin also faltered slightly before turning to Tina. I forgot to tell you, don't kill all of the Blood Tribe soldiers. Leave some for the students, otherwise they'll be very bored. Oh, Tina nodded obediently before asking with a serious expression. Generally speaking, how many should we leave for the students? Lin faltered slightly before replying. That is indeed a problem. How many monsters should we leave for the students so that they can fight to their heart's content? He looked toward the students on the city wall. How many monsters should I leave for each of you? All the students. Was it really appropriate to ask them this question? Why did it feel so weird? I think 5 should be enough, a male student said hesitantly. Bullsh asterisk T. Are you a man? Only 5? I want to fight 10. A tall and slender female student looked at the male student beside her with a disdainful expression. That's right, 10 is a more reasonable number. 1 against 10 sounds pretty awesome, and it can also be used as a training experience, another male student chimed in. I also agree to fight 10. And Lin listened to the opinions of all the students and discovered that leaving 10 enemies for each student was the most popular suggestion. As long as the Blood Tribe cultivators of the spirit nurturing stage didn't come, the prodigies of the various sects were quite confident that they could deal with a bunch of Blood Tribe cultivators of the Tao body stage. And Lin nodded with a gratified expression before turning to Tina. Just leave 100 Blood Tribe enemies for each of them. Oh, okay. Tina agreed with a dainty smile. All the students, so does classmate and Lin have some kind of misunderstanding about fighting against 10 people? They wanted 10, not 10 squared, hey. After destroying the blood pond in the city, Lin had all the students stand on the black brick again. Then, he leaped onto the brick and flew toward their next destination. He actually didn't have any misunderstandings about fighting 10 enemies. However, fighting 10 enemies was probably the lowest limit for the students, and it wouldn't serve as a training experience at all. Just like his mission of obtaining 10 golden realm essence crystals, that was a piece of cake. Hence, he wanted to increase the quota to 100. Only in this way could it be truly challenging and serve the purpose of training people. He didn't know why, but when he made this decision, he felt pretty good. City of 10,000 swords here. 20,000 vampires were lined up on the city walls. The atmosphere was awe-inspiring and awe-inspiring. In the city lord's mansion, a man in a red robe was sitting on a chair with a displeased expression. A black-robed man, who was also the city lord of this city, was nervously handing tea to the man in front of him. Dark Poison Lord, are you really going to kill all of the students from the Celestial Court? The city lord asked nervously. Humph. You actually tried in vain to eradicate all the cities in the eastern part of my nether poison region. Don't blame me for being ruthless. The Dark Poison Lord was already extremely displeased by the fact that his subordinate, Layden, had failed to become the holy disciple. Now that the Celestial Court was stabbing him in the back, how could he tolerate this? The Blood Tribe had always been fearless beings, so killing those students posed no burden or pressure to him. Even if he incurred the wrath of some mighty figures, he could just hide in the core region of the Dark Marshlands for a period of time. The City Lord smiled fawningly. With the Dark Poison Lord personally taking action, those students are nothing more than worthless chickens. The Dark Poison Lord chuckled coldly, with a disdainful expression. There's a group of people who are quite powerful, and they've already destroyed one of our blood pawns. Furthermore, judging from their route, their next stop should be in our direction. I'll make them the first targets. I'll show them what true power is. The city of 10,000 swords was a large city inhabited by tens of thousands of blood tribe cultivators. Just the soldiers responsible for battle and defense alone numbered at least 20,000, so their combat prowess was quite formidable. However, this defensive spell formation created by 20,000 blood tribe cultivators was suddenly destroyed by a crimson streak of light. A massive black brick descended from the sky, casting a dark shadow over all of the blood tribe cultivators. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! It's the Celestial Court. Attack! All of a sudden, battle alarms resounded throughout the entire city. 20 students leaped down from the black brick. All of their auras were extremely powerful, and all types of magic tools and spirit tools glowed brightly as they attacked the blood tribe cultivators on the city wall. In just a single exchange, several dozen blood tribe cultivators were blasted to death. Unlin looked down at the battle on the city wall from above, and he continuously used his lightning manipulation technique to attack the blood tribe cultivators of the spirit nurturing stage who posed a threat to the students. 20 people equals to 2,000 blood tribe cultivators, which means I have to kill 18,000 blood tribe cultivators. Tina's eyes wandered around the city wall as she counted with a serious expression. She ignored the blood tribe residents who hadn't fled from the city. Her only target was the blood tribe cultivators who were wielding weapons. A dazzling light burst forth from her heart lotus eye sword, and she was just about to deliver the final judgment on these blood tribe cultivators. Right at this moment, 2 streaks of crimson light suddenly shot out from within the city. One of the streaks of crimson light was surrounded by over 1,000 flying swords, and they were extremely powerful. The aura of the other streak of crimson light was as vast as the ocean, and there was a boundless black mist enshrouding its body. As soon as it appeared, the entire sky lost all color, and the area within a radius of 5 kilometers was transformed into a living hell. The poisonous mist obscured the sky, and the power of annihilation swept through heaven and earth, as if it were going to plunge all living beings into eternal darkness. All of the students shuddered in fear as they looked up at the streaks of crimson light in the distance with pale faces. Not only are there soul formation stage cultivators, but there are also return to void stage mighty figures here. A female student's legs gave out from under her. This was the first time she had faced the might of a return to void stage mighty figure as an enemy. Don't worry, we still have classmate Lin here. He's so powerful, so he'll definitely be fine. A male student offered words of consolation. That's right, God and is invincible. Another student offered words of encouragement. The Dark Poison Lord's golden hair danced in the wind behind him, and his crimson eyes were filled with surging, killing intent. Arrogant humans, do you really think you're invincible just because you have some measly power? How dare you invade a city of the Dark Poison Realm? I'm going to make sure you never return. Dabai shuddered as he sensed the terrifying aura radiating from the Dark Poison Lord. Big Brotherin, hurry up and call Xiaoza over. The enemy is a return to Void Stage mighty figure. There's no need for that. He's just a return to Void initial stage piece of trash. He won't be able to show off for long. And Lin waved his hand nonchalantly and said, Tell Xiaoza to stay on standby in case the other teams encounter any mishaps. Dabai, the dark poison lord, turned toward Lin as a cruel smile appeared on his face. Hee, a soul formation intermediate stage human cultivator? You should be the team leader of this team. Why aren't you running away? Have you been scared witless? And Lin also turned toward the dark poison lord, and he licked his lips with a scorching light in his eyes. You're only at the return to void initial stage. Even though you're a little weak, you're still qualified to be my underling. Chapter 639. Underling? The dark poison lord's expression faltered upon hearing this. His hearing was quite good, so he had clearly heard Lin's words. It was exactly because of this that he was a little dumbstruck. The human cultivator thought he was weak, and he wanted to make him his underling. Master Dark Poison Lord, the human cultivator has most likely gone mad. Let me capture him and bring him to you personally. The city lord of 10,000 Swords City spoke with an enraged expression. He was a soul formation final stage powerful being, and he immediately wanted to show off to the Dark Poison Lord after seeing Lin, who was only at the soul formation intermediate stage, spout nonsense. There's no need for that. The Dark Poison Lord's eyes flashed with ferocity as he said, I'll do it myself. I'll make him experience what it feels like to wish for death. He stepped forward, and dark winds instantly howled as poisonous mist engulfed the heavens. A terrifying aura engulfed heaven and earth, making the Blood Tribe soldiers and students all wobble on their feet. Master, how should we deal with this? Tina held an immortal tool in her hand as she stood in front of Lin. She was aware of the unique effects of Lin's blood, so she was hoping that Lin would smear his blood onto her sword. She always felt that using a sword that was stained with her master's blood to slash at her enemy would be a particularly thrilling experience. However, Lin disappointed her. Little Na, go and protect the students. As for the Dark Poison Lord, I'll deal with him myself. Lin stretched his body, and his battle intent surged. He was already itching to fight to his heart's content. Ever since he achieved initial success in his body of the war god, he hadn't fought to his heart's content. His battles against Xing Tian and Emperor's Way had given him a rough understanding of his own power, and at the same time, he had accumulated an extremely vast amount of war god intent. He needed a battle to his heart's content in order to ascertain his true strength. You're just a mere soul formation stage cultivator. How dare you? The Dark Poison Lord felt like he was being looked down upon by Tina and in Lin's calm expression, and he charged toward Lin before launching a fist toward him. The black poisonous mist enshrouding the Dark Poison Lord's fist was like a bottomless maw that could engulf all things, and even the air in its wake began to crackle and groan. If an ordinary soul formation cultivator were to accidentally touch this poisonous mist, they would definitely be corroded to the point that not even their bones would remain. Seeing this, the city lord had already retreated frantically. He looked at Lin with a hint of pity in his eyes. The Dark Poison Lord was clearly trying to devour the body of the man before him before extracting his consciousness and slowly torturing him. He believed that at that time, the man would understand that dying on the spot was also a kind of happiness. And Lin leaped toward the Dark Poison Lord from Dabai's back without dodging or evading. His body broke through the sound barrier, and the golden lotus symbol on his forehead flashed as a golden light flashed from his fist, which was imbued with the extremely powerful power of the earth as it crashed down upon the Dark Poison Lord. Rumble. The terrifying collision of energy caused the entire world to rumble. The city lord's eyes widened as he stared in disbelief at the scene before him. He was witnessing the terrifyingly powerful Dark Poison Lord being forced into retreat by a single punch from a soul formation stage cultivator. The golden fist punched a massive hole into the poisonous mist before landing on the Dark Poison Lord's body. A terrifying force instantly exploded forth, knocking the Dark Poison Lord back several hundred meters. The Dark Poison Lord felt as if a gargantuan divine mountain had crashed into his body, and his entire body was in excruciating pain. Who the hell are you? He stared at Lin in shock, unable to believe that such a terrifying attack had been unleashed by a soul formation stage cultivator. Me? I'm your papa. and Lin raised his head with a disdainful expression as he unleashed his body of the war god and charged toward the Dark Poison Lord again. The Dark Poison Lord was enraged, and he gritted his teeth as he made a grabbing motion toward Lin. The space within a radius of over a kilometer suddenly congealed. Spatial seal. This was a spatial technique that only Return to Void stage mighty figures could unleash. To cultivators who had yet to reach the soul formation stage, this was the most invincible technique. It could imprison all enemies who had yet to comprehend the power of space, thereby reducing them to meat on the chopping block. A ferocious expression appeared on the Dark Poison Lord's face. No matter how powerful the cultivator before him was, it would all be for naught if he had yet to comprehend the power of space. However, a streak of red light suddenly pierced through the spatial seal, shattering all of his illusions. Wings of wind appeared on Lin's back, and streams of wind revolve around his evil-slaying sword as he abruptly pounced toward the Dark Poison Lord. And Lin's speed was boosted to an extremely terrifying level by the addition of the wind sword, and his body left a white trail in his wake as he flew through the air. The black poisonous mist domain surged toward Lin, but Lin showed no signs of resistance as he charged directly toward the poisonous mist. How dare you charge directly into my poisonous mist? You're seeking death. An elated expression appeared on the Dark Poison Lord's face. However, before he had a chance to celebrate, Lin tore through the poisonous mist completely unscathed and instantly appeared before the Dark Poison Lord. How could this be? The Dark Poison Lord's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Even a Return to Void initial stage cultivator would be severely wounded if he were to charge into his poisonous mist, let alone a soul formation stage cultivator. However, this cultivator was only at the soul formation intermediate stage, so how could he be completely unscathed? Just as the Dark Poison Lord was in a state of shock, and Lin's evil-slaying sword had already slashed down upon his body. The Dark Poison Lord was a Return to Void stage, super powerful being, but even he was struggling to keep up with the speed of Lin's sword. Splat! The Dark Poison Lord hurriedly retreated, but a ghastly gash was still inflicted upon his body by the evil-slaying sword. Blood splattered through the air, and he appeared to be in quite a sorry state. At this moment, the spectating city lord and blood tribe soldiers were completely dumbstruck. What happened to abusing the little kid? Why was the tables being turned now? The Dark Poison Lord was a Return to Void stage mighty figure, a super powerful being who ruled over an entire territory. How could a powerful being of this caliber be suppressed by a soul formation stage cultivator? Could it be that this Dark Poison Lord was a fake? No, he couldn't be a fake. The city lord shook his head in shock. The Dark Poison Lord was extremely powerful. The power that he could unleash with just a wave of his hand was extremely terrifying. However, the Dark Poison Lord had encountered a soul formation stage cultivator who was even more terrifying than him. That was the truth. However, all of the Blood Tribe soldiers found this hard to accept. Since when could a soul formation stage cultivator contend against a Return to Void stage mighty figure? This didn't make any sense at all. In contrast, the 20 students quickly accepted this reality. This is the god I know. He's so handsome. A female student exclaimed with stars in her eyes. I already told you that with classmate and Lin here, we'll definitely be fine. A male student heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. The biggest reward for this trip is probably witnessing a battle between Return to Void stage mighty figures. This battle has given me a lot of inspiration, a student said excitedly. Wrong. This isn't a battle between Return to Void stage mighty figures. It's a battle between soul formation stage mighty figures and Return to Void stage mighty figures. In the sky above, the Dark Poison Lord finally exploded with rage. He let loose an enraged roar, and the poisonous mist around his body surged forth in a frenzy. You forced me to do this. I didn't want to use this technique, but now I'm going to give you a taste of my heart of 10,000 poisons. The inky black poisonous mist surged forth in a frenzy, and it was as if the ocean had poured into the world, instantly engulfing the entire city. Tens of thousands of Blood Tribe cultivators were engulfed by the boundless poisonous mist, and they howled in agony before their bodies and souls were destroyed in less than a breath's time. The city lord fled into the distance with all his might, but he was still unable to escape the spreading poisonous mist. His soul formation stage body began to slowly turn black and rot. He wailed in anguish as he frantically unleashed spell techniques to defend himself. However, 10 seconds later, he was still reduced to a puddle of black blood and was completely corroded. Heaven and earth fell into a vast expanse of darkness. Only Tina, who was protecting the 20 students in Dubai, was still like a lantern in the dark night, emitting a faint glow. Chapter 640. The Dark Poison Lord's eyes were crimson, and after devouring tens of thousands of Blood Tribe cultivators, he was like a fiend celestial that could destroy the world. The poisonous mist engulfed heaven and earth, and not only the lives of the Blood Tribe cultivators, even the entire city of 10,000 swords was slowly being melted by it. This was a truly apocalyptic spell technique. Who would have thought that you would be able to survive in this poisonous mist? The Dark Poison Lord's eyes pierced through the dense, poisonous mist, and a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes as he caught sight of Enlin. He extended a hand, and a pure burst of black mist surged toward Enlin. Enlin carefully sensed the fearsome power around him, but he didn't unleash any defensive spell techniques. He knew that his body of the war god would be able to handle this kind of power with no issues. He knew roughly what the limits of his own body's defenses were. This was all thanks to his battle with Emperor Ziwei that he had come to understand this profound truth. It was exactly because of this that he knew that he was far from reaching that limit. Boom! An even more fearsome black mist swept toward him. Enlin unleashed his divine sense to its fullest extent, and he was able to ascertain the location of the black mist. Bam! The black shockwave caused the air to twist and warp. His body tore through the air again, and he unleashed his wind spirit and wind sword as he charged toward the Dark Poison Lord. A streak of white light sliced through the black mist before crashing down upon the Dark Poison Lord. However, the Dark Poison Lord's speed suddenly became extraordinarily fast, and his body flashed to Enlin's side like a ghost, allowing him to evade the wind sword technique. His claws were as sharp as blades as they slashed toward Enlin. Whoosh! His razor-sharp claws tore through the air, leaving a black line in their wake before crashing into Enlin's body. A massive gash instantly appeared on Enlin's clothes. Immediately afterward, his skin came into contact with the sharp claws, and an extremely fearsome force traveled through his body, striking him with an extremely sharp pain. Whoosh whoosh! The sharp claws transformed into inky black streaks that struck Enlin's body like bolts of lightning, and an extremely sharp screech sounded. Enlin's body flew backward. Faint divine light flowed from the point of contact. Such a terrifying attack was still unable to tear his body apart. The Dark Poison Lord faltered slightly upon seeing this, but he immediately pounced toward Enlin again without any hesitation. In my nether poison world, my speed and strength are greatly enhanced. You are no match for me. The Dark Poison Lord's claws were like swords and sabers, and they slashed through the air in a series of lethal trajectories. At the same time, the poisonous mist around him was like an omnipresent corrosive attack that relentlessly attacked Enlin's body. Enlin unleashed his endless night sword technique and unleashed one extremely domineering sword projection after another. The black sword projection clashed with the Dark Poison Lord's sharp claws, reducing everything within a radius of over a kilometer into rubble. Enlin's sword strikes were unable to keep up with the Dark Poison Lord's attacks, and he was also being completely outclassed in terms of power. Basically, every time Enlin struck the Dark Poison Lord, his body would be struck 3 times. As a Blood Tribe returned to Void Stage Mighty Figure, the Dark Poison Lord possessed extremely powerful regenerative abilities. The wounds inflicted by the evil-slaying sword healed at a rate discernible to the naked eye. Ha ha ha! When it comes to battles of attrition, no one can compare to us blood tribe cultivators. The dark poison lord had the upper hand, and he chortled gleefully as he unleashed even more powerful spell techniques. Within Tina's white barrier of light, all of the students stared at the dense black mist with nervous expressions on their faces. The battle between Lin and the dark poison lord had already been obscured by the black mist, so they couldn't see what was going on inside. However, the dark poison lord's triumphant laughter traveled clearly into their ears, and it was quite clear that Lin was already on the back foot. All of the students were completely entranced by Lin's battle, and many of them were even clenching their fists as their bodies trembled uncontrollably. "Senior Tina, why don't you go and help as well? Just get us out of the range of the poison mist." A determined expression appeared on one of the students' faces, as if they had made up their minds. Many of the students immediately chimed in with his words. They didn't want to become Lin's burden. Now that Lin was in a difficult situation, they naturally knew what to do. Tina faltered slightly upon hearing this, as if she didn't expect the students to say something like this. She turned her gaze toward the students, and she suddenly felt like all of them were good people, just like Lin. "There's no need for that. I'm afraid that you won't be able to evade the poison mist once it expands." A sweet smile appeared on Tina's face as she said, "Besides, my master won't be defeated so easily. He's extremely powerful." An extremely determined expression appeared on her face as she spoke, as if she was completely convinced that Lin wouldn't be defeated. That expression even made some die-hard fans lower their heads in shame. That's right, in Tina's heart, Lin had always been a very reliable and safe person. Therefore, as long as Lin didn't ask for help, she wouldn't interfere. She believed that Lin would win. A white sword projection sliced through the boundless black mist before crashing down toward the dark poison lord, as if it were a divine weapon capable of dispelling all darkness. Supreme Nightless Daybreak. The dark poison lord's expression changed drastically. Even though he had set up a spatial poison mist barrier in front of him, it was still sliced in half by that terrifying sword strike. Blood splattered in the air. Everyone saw the figure standing proudly in the void like a god of war. The long sword carried endless white light, becoming the only source of light between heaven and earth. The dark poison lord's body had already been sliced in half, and blood splattered through the air. The boundless poisonous fog that covered the sky was cleaved in half by the daybreak sword slash. Sunlight began to shine on the ruins of a city of 10,000 swords, as if everything had been settled. "He won," some of the students murmured. As expected of Godin, he really won. Some of the female students began to yell with elation. However, before some of the students could even come to their senses, Tina shook her head. "Not yet. His life force is still present." All of the students faltered upon hearing this. When they looked up into the sky again, they discovered that the dark poison lord's body had been drawn by some kind of power, and it had fused together as one again. The dark poison lord's features were a little pale, but a smug smile appeared on his face. "You've lost. Your aura has weakened significantly, so I'm sure you won't be able to unleash that attack a second time, right?" Inky black poison mist enveloped his claws as he spoke, and a ferocious expression appeared on his face. "But I still have a lot of power. Your defenses require energy to maintain, and I'll be able to break through your body sooner or later, seal your consciousness, and torture you with poison for over 10,000 years. And Lin panted heavily as he heaved a forlorn sigh. "You're too weak." "No, you're not weak. You're very powerful. I've never seen a soul formation stage cultivator as powerful as you. It's a pity that your opponent is me." A rare expression of approval and praise appeared on the dark poison lord's face as he continued. "If you kneel down and beg for mercy now and become my slave, I might consider sparing your life." And Lin looked at the dark poison lord with a pitiful expression. "I think you might have misunderstood something. What I meant was that you're too weak, dark poison lord. What happened to flattering each other? Is this how you *king talk?" The veins on the dark poison lord's forehead bulged, and he completely dismissed the idea of taking Lin as his slave. Right now, his only thought was to poison the physical body of the man in front of him, and then let him have a taste of life worse than death, and torture him for 10,000 years. Furthermore, someone like you wants to take me in as a servant? And Lin chuckled as if he had been amused. Do you know that I have 3 slaves who just so happen to be the holy disciples of your blood tribe? Chapter 6:41. The holy disciple is your servant? The dark poison lord faltered slightly upon hearing this, before chortling with glee. Haha, you're about to die, and you're already playing dumb? You think the holy disciple of the blood tribe is someone you can talk about? And you say he's your servant? Haha. And Lin's words really did seem to be quite hilarious. In any case, the dark poison lord was laughing, and Lin couldn't be bothered to prove his words to the dark poison lord. He was going to let the dark poison lord laugh for as long as he could. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to laugh anymore. He pulled out his evil slaying sword and made a small cut on his arm. Blood stained the evil slaying sword, making it appear even more sinister. The dark poison lord faltered slightly upon seeing this. How was it that Lin was able to pierce through the defenses that he had unleashed all of his power to no avail? Could it be that Lin was already able to control the intensity of his flesh and blood at will, and he had already reached a level where he could control his flesh and blood to the finest detail? Also, why was he staining his sword with blood? Could it be that he was going to unleash some kind of blood sacrifice spell technique? The dark poison lord's mind raced, and he didn't dare to underestimate his opponent as he focused his attention on Lin. A smile appeared on Lin's face. Now, it's time to purify your life force. A black mist began to emanate from his body, and his aura soared explosively, instantly reaching the pinnacle of the soul formation stage. The dark poison lord's expression shifted slightly as 8 poison dragons over 10,000 feet in length appeared beside him. They revolved in the air, exuding a terrifying aura that threatened to crush heaven and earth. And Lin stepped forward, and his body instantly broke through the sound barrier as he pounced toward the dark poison lord. The dark poison lord didn't dare to get complacent, and he waved a hand through the air, upon which 3 poison dragons opened their massive, corrosive mouths before pouncing toward the oncoming white figure. And Lin's evil-slaying sword shuddered slightly, and boundless darkness instantly descended, plunging the entire heaven and earth into darkness. At the same time, everything fell silent, and all auras and senses were instantly stripped away. 6 strikes of the war god, Shadow Tiger. The dark poison lord felt death envelop his entire body in that instant, but he remained extremely calm as he instantly enveloped his remaining 5 poison dragons in a defensive barrier. However, right at this moment, a black vortex suddenly appeared beneath his feet. At the same time, an extremely terrifying gravitational force instantly formed, as if it was going to suck in the entire world. Regardless of whether it was the air, the vital energy, the vast expanse of poisonous mist, or the dark poison lord's body, all of them were struck by an extremely fearsome gravitational force. It was like a deep black hole that could devour everything in the world. The dark poison lord and the black dragons around him both faltered. At this moment, a black figure broke through the poison dragon's cocoon at lightning speed before appearing behind the dark poison lord. The evil slaying sword, which was stained with blood, slashed a massive gash into the dark poison lord's body. Courting death, the dark poison lord was wounded again, and a strong sense of humiliation welled up in his heart. He began to retaliate with all his might, and the 8 poison dragons pounced toward Lin with unstoppable force. And Lin couldn't continue to maintain the abyss gravity. He opened his wings of wind and retreated frantically to avoid the poison dragon's attack. It doesn't matter how many times you injure me. You will be the one to lose in the end. The dark poison lord's sinister voice sounded from the depths of hell. 1 poison dragon after another caught up to Lin and bit at Lin relentlessly. However, Lin's body was like an indestructible diamond. No matter how the poison dragons bit at him, his body remained completely unscathed. My apologies. You're really weak, much weaker than even Merlin. However, I can still accept you as my underling. And Lin used his evil-slaying sword to slice through a poison dragon over 10,000 feet in length before speaking with a smile. You're still running your mouth when you're about to die. Let's see how long you can last. A vicious expression appeared on the dark poison lord's face, and his attacks became more and more ferocious. Aren't you curious why I smear my blood on my sword? Your body has already been stained by my blood. You are about to be purified by my holy blood. And Lin spoke with a smug expression. He didn't even need to retaliate. All he had to do was evade the Dark Poison Lord's attacks and wait for his blood to take effect. The Dark Poison Lord chuckled coldly upon hearing Lin's words. Nonsense! He didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he suddenly felt an unprecedented power coursing through his body. This power instantly swept through his entire body, bringing with it a destructive power. The Dark Poison Lord's eyes widened as he clutched his chest with one hand. He stared at Lin with an agonized expression. What did you do to me? Nothing much. I told you. My blood has a purifying effect on you. And Lin held his evil-slaying sword in front of him as blood flowed down its blade. Now, you will experience what it feels like to be reborn from destruction. The Dark Poison Lord's breathing began to accelerate as a peculiar flush appeared on his face. He suddenly threw up a large mouthful of blood, and his body swayed before plummeting through the air. The poison mist dissipated, and, at the same time, the Dark Poison Lord's vitality began to wane. Boom! His body crashed heavily into the ground, and there was still a look of despair on his face. His mouth was still gaping wide open, but he was completely devoid of vitality. And Lin was completely dumbstruck upon seeing this. He flew over to the Dark Poison Lord's side and drew a sharp intake of breath as he stared at the pale, lifeless body of the Dark Poison Lord. How did he die? He opened his mouth wide and looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Where was the Apothecary Lord? Where was the purifying effect? How the F***ck did he become the Poison Lord? My blood is so bad *SS that it can even kill Blood Tribe Return to Void Stage Mighty Figures. And Lin felt like his thoughts were in a mess and needed some time to sort them out. This scene was also witnessed by the students under Tina's protection. They saw Lin turn from offense to defense after wounding the Dark Poison Lord, and then the Dark Poison Lord's sudden death, upon which they all erupted into raucous cheers. The Dark Poison Lord's vitality has suddenly been severed. Didn't Lin just use a spell technique similar to a bloodline curse? So powerful. As expected of a number 1 student of the United University of Cultivation, he was even able to slay a return to Void Stage Blood Tribe mighty figure with a single sword strike. Being able to witness such a thrilling battle is the biggest reward for me during this end-of-semester examination. All of the students were discussing spiritedly among themselves. Tina withdrew her defensive spell technique upon seeing that all of the enemies had been slain before rushing over to Lin's side with Dabai. Big Brotherin, I didn't think you'd become so powerful. Riches and honor are mutually beneficial. Woof. Dabai rushed to Lin's side with an excited expression on his face. His big, black eyes were glowing with excitement, and he wore an adorable expression. Jine and Lin, why did your blood kill this man? Shouldn't it be very satisfying to drink? Tina had seen Lin feed his blood to a blood tribe cultivator before, so she was quite perplexed. Tina voiced the question in Lin's mind. Wasn't my blood supposed to be very satisfying to drink? Why did it turn into poison? He made his way over to the Dark Poison Lord and looked at the Dark Poison Lord's pained and despairing expression. Even though his body was unscathed, his vitality had been completely severed, and he suddenly came to a realization. Wasn't this the same thing when he killed the spirit-nurturing stage blood kings and soul formation stage blood gods? Could it be that this Dark Poison Lord was simply too weak? So weak that he was unable to withstand the purifying power of his blood. Holy F***ck. This return to Void Stage Dark Poison Lord was way too weak. Chapter 642. Lin felt like his conjecture was correct. The Dark Poison Lord was simply too weak. They were so weak that they couldn't even withstand the purifying power of his blood and began to collapse. However, was there really such a huge disparity between a normal return to void initial stage cultivator and a cultivator at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage? And Lynn stroked his chin in deep thought. Merlin and Cassidy had ingested his holy blood when they were both at the pinnacle of the return to void initial stage. At that time, even though they were more powerful than the Dark Poison Lord, they wouldn't be much more powerful. He suddenly thought of another possibility, and his heart skipped a beat as he cried out involuntarily. Could it be that I'm too strong? Dabai was startled by Lynn's sudden exclamation, and he rolled his eyes. That's right, Big Brother is so strong. Speaking of which, you don't have to say it yourself, do you? You've lost all your dignity, woof. And Lynn's lips twitched. He turned to look at his own body and said, My body of the war god was only in its embryonic form, so little Mai and the others could absorb my blood. However, my body of the war god has reached initial success stage, and the power contained within my blood has become even more powerful, so even return of void stage mighty figures are unable to withstand it. He felt that the possibility of this was very high. After all, the changes in his body were the core cause of the changes in his blood. As for the specifics, he felt that he had to find a few blood tribe mighty figures to test it out. He took the Dark Poison Lord's storage ring and destroyed the blood pond in the city of 10,000 swords. Then he flew toward the next target city with the students atop his brick. Within a heavenly palace in the core region of the Dark Marshlands continent, Layden was cultivating in silence. Not gaining the recognition of the blood ancestor and becoming the sacred son was a huge blow to him. However, his Tao heart was firm, and he immediately transformed his grief and indignation into motivation. He worked hard to cultivate in seclusion, and he strived to take that final step and break through to the Tao integration realm within 1,000 years. Crack! At this time, the sound of a command token shattering came from the main hall. Layden's eyes opened as shock and rage appeared on his face. The Dark Poison Lord is dead, and he died in the Dark Poison realm near the Kingdom of the Nine States? Was it done by the 4 great sects of the Kingdom of the Nine States, or was it done by the Celestial Court? The Dark Poison Lord was one of Layden's core subordinates, and he couldn't just ignore his sudden death. The Dark Poison Lord was a return to Void Stage Blood tribe mighty figure with extremely powerful life force. Even if he couldn't defeat him, he would still be able to escape. To be able to slay him in the Dark Marshlands, his opponent had to be extremely powerful and had to have mobilized multiple return to Void Stage mighty figures or return to Void Final Stage super mighty figures. Therefore, it was most likely the Heavenly Court or the 4 major sects who could do this. Dark Poison Lord, I'll definitely avenge you. Layden's eyes narrowed, and his expression darkened, like he was that he that was, and that he, Poison Lord, that he that, a god. Its son, demon. In heaven, dynasty king, that dynasty realm, the dynasty, the entire world turned into a hell of lightning. Tens of thousands of vampires were blasted to death by the lightning, and not a single one of them could escape. At the very top of the dark clouds, a black dragon that was thousands of feet long and had a metallic luster all over its body stretched its head out and appeared in the world. A terrifying pressure engulfed the entire city as if a divine dragon had descended into the world. Beyond, there's no one who can fight. This is already the 3rd city. Also, why are they so slow? Forget about the others. Master is so strong. Why hasn't he conquered the 2nd city after so long? 5 teams, 13 cities. Xiaoza had already destroyed the 3rd city, but he still hadn't seen any signs of the other teams. It was clear that they hadn't even conquered the 2nd city. Could he have met with some sort of trouble? Xiaoza was taken aback at first, but then he shook his head and said, That's impossible. No one is contacting me through my voice transmission talisman. They must be trying to train the students, so they're a little slow. As a mobile member, as long as there was trouble, he could cross space and rush over as fast as he could. Even if a student encountered a return to Void Stage powerhouse, he could instantly rush over to help. Forget it. I'll leave some for them. Xiaoza transformed into a cute young man and began to meditate in the air. Not long after that, he saw Lin flying toward him atop his brick. Huh, little Xiao, you've already conquered this city? And Lin asked with a surprised expression. Master, Xiaoza greeted him with a wide grin. Not only this city, but I've also conquered the 2 cities behind it. And Lin nodded with a gratified expression. Thank you for your hard work. I just killed a blood tribe returned to void stage mighty figure, so I was delayed for a while. Ha, it's fine, Master, I understand. Xiaoza nodded with an indifferent expression, and Lin's face convulsed slightly. My disciple, where's your astonishment? Why are you acting so matter-of-factly? How am I supposed to flex in front of you when you're like this? As Xiaoza's master, and Lin was still feeling a little guilty. Hence, he wanted to prove himself through some accomplishments so that his disciple would revere him and maintain his dignity as a master. But now, it looked like his accomplishments weren't enough to shock his disciple. Not long after that, Su Xiaolan also arrived. She was hoisting a group of students behind her using a cloud and misspell technique, and there was an expression of excitement on her face. It was clear that she had enjoyed the battle just then. Xiaolan, I just killed a blood tribe returned to void stage mighty figure in a one-on-one battle. And Lin's eyes lit up as he spoke with a smug expression. Su Xiaolan's eyes roamed over in Lin's body as she asked in a pleasant voice, Are you hurt anywhere? No. A mere return to void stage blood tribe return to void stage can't do anything to me. And Lin puffed out his chest with a smug expression. The wound that he had sliced open by himself had already been healed by the evergreen technique. Oh, Su Xiaolan nodded before sorting through the storage rings that she had plundered. And Lin, Su Xiaolan raised her head, and she seemed to have noticed in Lin's eager-to-praise expression. Her brows perked up slightly, and a faint smile appeared on her face. And Lin, you're the best. You even defeated a return to void stage blood tribe return to void stage. And Lin, you flatter me. It's just a small matter, not worth mentioning. For some reason, he wanted Xiaolan to praise him, but he couldn't bring himself to be happy after being praised. He soon came to a realization. It had to be because Su Xiaolan wasn't shocked. Not long after that, the team led by the Flying Sword God and Xiao Chou also returned. They were all in good spirits, and even though there were some injuries on their team, none of them had perished. This was already the best result they could hope for. Not long after that, the team led by Xinyuan Cheng and Su Qinyun also returned, and Lin's eyes widened upon seeing their team, and he couldn't help but draw a sharp intake of breath. He was astonished. Chapter 643. Xinyuan Cheng and Su Qinyun returned with a group of students, but they were in extremely sorry states. It wasn't that they were severely injured, but rather that they were in extremely sorry states. Most of the students' clothes had been reduced to rags, and their faces were black and charred. Those who didn't know them would think that they were beggar sect disciples. And Lin immediately understood what was going on. Big Brother Cheng, did you use your nuclear bomb domain again? What nuclear bomb domain? I used my myriad spirit, Tai Chi, Yin Yang, coexistence domain. Xinyuan Cheng replied with a serious expression. Su Qinyun pouted with a resentful expression. I didn't see Yin, I only saw Yang. All the students chimed in agreement. It was obvious that they had suffered greatly. Xinyuan Cheng blushed as he said in a low voice, My enemy was a soul formation final stage cultivator. He was too powerful, so I couldn't help but use my domain. It was quite clear that the unlucky blood tribe cultivator had been blasted to death by Xinyuan Cheng's nuclear bomb domain. It was a pity that Su Qinyun was as beautiful as a flower, but she now looked like a little black cat. And Lin pulled out his phone and snapped a photo of these adorable students as a souvenir. Xinyuan Cheng's handsome, dark-skinned face was tinged with guilt and embarrassment. Su Qinyun's adorable, dark-skinned eyes, but there was a hint of bitterness on her face. And her classmates' expressions of class rep, I was wrong about you, all froze in the frame. He put away his phone with a joyful expression. It would definitely be very interesting to look at these photos and reminisce about these events in the future, right? The homeroom teacher was ecstatic to see all of the students return safely. It was very normal for casualties to occur in a battle between the cultivators of the Celestial Court and the Blood Tribe. However, this group of students had minimized the number of casualties and none of them had perished. This was extremely unimaginable. It could be said that they had secured a resounding victory in this battle. Everyone returned to Yellow Spring City, and the Flying Sword God reported the results of Class 1 to the Celestial Court Executive Department of the Dark Marshlands. The report this time had given the Celestial Court's Executive Department quite a scare. What? There were a total of 14 major cities of the Blood Race within 500 kilometers of Yellow Spring City, and all of them had been destroyed. The number of students who died was 0. Lin had even killed the Dark Poison Lord who ruled over an entire territory. The staff of the Celestial Court's Executive Department looked up at the sky. Was this something that a class from Shioshin United University could do? Most of them had graduated from the United University of Cultivation as well, so they were all looking at these newbies from the perspective of seniors in the Dark Marshlands. Only now did he realize that this was no newbie at all. It was a ferocious and powerful prehistoric beast. This group of students had cleanly wiped out the forces of 14 major Blood Tribe cities and even killed a Blood Tribe mighty figure. As seniors, they suddenly felt that they didn't know how to face this group of junior brothers and sisters. Sigh, I'm such a lazy bum. A man from the executive department sighed with emotion after looking at the battle report for a long while. Thinking about it from another perspective, it's actually not a bad thing. Our work has become a lot easier with their arrival. At the very least, we can relax for a while. A woman in a red dress chimed in with a faint smile. I've heard that there's a class of supremely talented students in our university, and I've finally seen what they're capable of now. A muscular man grinned, revealing a row of pristine white teeth. We can't get complacent yet. The destruction of the city isn't a big deal, but we've lost a return to Void Stage Blood Tribe mighty figure, so we have to be wary of the vengeance of the other Blood Tribe mighty figures. A handsome man with skin as fair as jade and pink rouge on his lips spoke as he waved his fan. I know, Department Head Shun. I'll tell everyone else to be more vigilant. The woman in the red dress waved a hand with a nonchalant expression. Yang Ruoling, don't you know Lin? What do you think of him? The seductive man asked. Him? I've only seen him when I first entered the ancient Tai Chu realm. In any case, he's a super backdoor entrant. I'm going to have to rely on him if I want to become the palace leader of the Flower Palace in the future. The woman in the red dress replied with a smile. The man's expression darkened. Be serious. Yang Ruoling pursed her lips. He's very powerful, and he seems to have his own unique inheritance. He also has a lot of trump cards and all types of powerful forces that he can rely on. In any case, as long as he's not up against super mighty figures at the Return of Void Pinnacle stage or Dao Integration stage, he should be able to handle everything. Also, Department Head, don't count on Lin to come to our executive department. He's most likely going to stay at the main department in the future. The man was not displeased in the slightest upon hearing this. Instead, a gratified smile appeared on his face. I'm very happy to have someone like him in the Celestial Court. Seeing as he already has the ability to handle the vast majority of situations, let's focus on the other cities. In Huangquan City, the city lord held a lavish banquet to celebrate the triumphant return of all the students. On this day, the entire city erupted into a joyous celebration after the residents received the news. All of the nearby enemies have been wiped out, and even the Blood Tribe cultivators have been killed. How could the residents not be elated? This day was even livelier than the New Year. Their class mission was to assist the soldiers of Huangquan City in battling the Blood Tribe. Now, all of the Blood Tribe forces within a 500-kilometer radius had been wiped out, and the soldiers of Huangquan City didn't even have a chance to fight. Even Lin and the others didn't know what to do next. The mission had been completed over the limit, and they were invincible within a 500-kilometer radius. Some of the Blood Tribe city lords who had participated in the Holy Disciple selection returned to the cities they were stationed in, and their hearts raced as they looked at the ruins. The Blood Tribe's Divine Palace of Life was the most powerful force that protected the entire Dark Marshlands continent. It was somewhat similar to the Celestial Court in the Kingdom of the Nine States. For example, Emperor Yi Deng, the previous holy disciple, Emperor Mang, Emperor Fu Tian, and Empress Helen were the four most powerful emperors in the divine palace of life, and they were responsible for ruling over the entire dark marshlands. The city lords reported the destruction of 14 cities to the divine palace of life. As for how to deal with the aftermath, that was not up to the city lords to decide. The blood ponds had been destroyed, and even if they wanted to rebuild their cities, it would take at least a few years to over a decade. If it weren't for the fact that the humans of the Kingdom of the Nine States were extremely disdainful of the filthy land of the Blood Tribe, perhaps the Kingdom of the Nine States would be able to expand even further. After a brief period of celebration, the cities on the border of the Kingdom of the Nine States entered a state of alert again. At the same time, at the central region of the dark marshlands, a man standing on auspicious clouds with an otherworldly aura, floating like a celestial, received a piece of news. Oh, 14 cities in the Dark Poison realm have been destroyed, and even the Dark Poison Lord has died? There doesn't seem to be any powerful beings from the Celestial Court who are powerful enough to kill the Dark Poison Lord in the Dark Poison realm. This is getting interesting. A faint smile appeared on the man's face, and his eyes were as crimson as a demonic beast's, which was a stark contrast to his ethereal disposition. Layden is already on his way. Daisy, you should go and have a look as well. There's no need to interfere, just observe from the shadows. Yes, Emperor Fu Tian, a beautiful woman with short golden hair, stepped out from the cloud and mist. She bowed to the man before disappearing into the cloud and mist again. Chapter 644. Huangquan City. The mission of the first class of students was to cooperate with the soldiers in the city to defend against the Blood Tribe. Now that all of the Blood Tribe in a radius of over 500 kilometers had been wiped out, all they could do was stand on the city wall and stare blankly at nothing. Some students suggested pushing the front line toward the dark marshlands, but all of these suggestions were vetoed by the Flying Sword God. The Blood Tribe had already realized that they could be ambushed if they attacked recklessly. Some of the neighboring cities had also benefited from their previous battle. Many of the students had been forced to slack off as well. They stared blankly at the vast and empty continent, not knowing what to do. In the past, there would still be a few Blood Tribe scouts, but now there weren't even any mosquitoes to be seen. And Lin had set up a table of mahjong atop the city wall, and he was currently playing the game. He left the scouting on the city wall to his disciple. Xiao Zhe was a powerful being at the pinnacle of the return to Void Intermediate stage anyway, and his divine sense was comparable to that of first-rate sect, so it was safest for him to stay here. Bam! F*CK. Su Xiaolan waved a hand outward with a dainty smile. That's it. Every word is the same. And Lin, Dabai, and Xin Yuan Cheng all heaved forlorn sighs. Xiao Chou handed over 8 stuffed buns ignored by Dabai to Xiaolan as his spoils of war. All of the spectating students stared at Lin and the others with scorching light in their eyes. They also wanted to play mahjong like this. Tui. They also wanted to play stuffed buns like this. Wrong. That's what it meant. 100 steamers meant 1,000 stuffed buns in total, which was enough for them to play for an entire day. And Lin saw a hint of yearning in Su Qinyun's dreamy eyes, and he immediately relinquished his seat. Come on, you can play as well. Huh? Can I really play? But I don't really know how to play. Su Qinyun was a little hesitant as she looked at the mahjong on the table with a hint of curiosity mixed with nervousness. Sure, you could just lose a bit more. And Lin smiled. Just like that, and Lin gave his seat to Su Qinyun. Then, Su Qinyun perfectly fulfilled in Lin's words and lost a little more. Some of the spectating students saw the 4 players playing mahjong on the table, and they had a rough idea of how they were going to play. They used a spell technique to create a bunch of mahjong tiles and began to play as well. However, the stakes weren't as high as Dabai ignores Steam Bun, and they were only betting on some spirit stones and pills. Gradually, a wave of mahjong became popular on the city wall. After the Flying Sword God and City Lord Cheng Fei finished their business, they walked up the stairs and headed towards the stronghold. Ha! Fellow Taoist Ling Xiao, your student is really a dragon among men, a proud son of heaven. Such responsible and powerful students are like the dazzling new stars of the celestial court. Their radiance will definitely illuminate the entire kingdom of the 9 states in the future. City Lord Chung Fei praised loudly with a smile on his face. The Flying Sword God was very proud of himself, but he still maintained a modest expression. You're too kind, fellow Taoist Chung Fei. They're only average and outstanding. They still have a long way to go. Your soldiers are well-trained and are the elite soldiers of the state. I observed your soldiers' training before and found that they are extremely proficient in the use of joint spell formations. Their morale and battle intent are all one and the same, which is truly admirable. It's exactly because of your protection that the kingdom of the 9 states is not invaded. The two of them exchanged pleasantries as they walked out of the circular gate and appeared on the city wall. Then, both of them were stunned by the scene that unfolded before them. Crackle, crackle, crackle. I touch. Haha, I'll screw you. I lose it. I throw it. I touch again. I win. Tui, you're cheating. Do you know how to play? On the city wall, the students set up tables and began to play mahjong. Of course, there was also a small group of students who silently gathered together to play landlord. The scene was so beautiful that the Flying Sword God couldn't even imagine it. Even City Lord Chung Fei's lips twitched. He had just been praising the students with all his might just a moment ago, but this joyous mahjong scene on top of the city wall made his face burn with embarrassment. Although the Flying Sword God's mood fluctuated and his gaze shifted elsewhere from time to time, at the very least, he still stuck to his post. On this point, the students were completely outclassed. Thankfully, his performance just then was a bit more modest, and he didn't directly respond to the City Lord's praise. Otherwise, he would have been completely humiliated by these students. However, thinking about it, these students were only around 20 years of age and had spent most of their time cultivating. They had never gone through the military-style training of the military, so their mental state and discipline were still quite lacking compared to the soldiers. Thus, it was understandable that this would happen. Ahem, students, what you all doing? The Flying Sword God braced himself and spoke in a loud voice. Bang! I'll screw you. Ha! The Flying Sword God's flesh crawled, and he was just about to flare up. At this moment, a student raised his hand and reported, Homeroom teacher, we're playing mahjong. The Flying Sword God's face convulsed. What the F***CK is this? I'm asking you what you're doing because I'm condemning what you're doing, not actually asking you what you're doing. Did all of you cultivate to the point that there was something wrong with your brains? Some students understood the meaning behind the homeroom teacher's words, and they offered an explanation. Senior Xiaoza is responsible for the safety of Huangquan City, and his divine sense is extremely powerful. If he can't find us, then we definitely won't be able to either, so why don't we do something else? The Flying Sword God faltered upon hearing this, and he sighed with emotion in his heart. That sounded quite reasonable. Could it be that his excuse for scolding the students was also gone as well? He turned his gaze toward a certain spot on top of the city wall, where a handsome young man in black sat with his legs crossed. His eyes were tightly shut, and he seemed to be in a certain state. That young man was none other than Xiaoza, who was responsible for the safety of Huangquan City. The Flying Sword God felt like Xiaoza's condition was a little strange. Why was his body swaying slightly? He made his way over to discover that there was still a translucent liquid hanging from the corner of Xiaoza's lips, and his body was swaying unconsciously in the wind. The Flying Sword God's chest constricted, and he roared with rage in his heart. Was this really King City Guard? Are you sure he's not sleeping? My God, these students must have gotten a little too full of themselves. The Flying Sword God felt like it was time for him to teach his students the right outlook on their profession, cultivation, and values. And Lin made his way over to Tina, who had her eyes closed, as if she were meditating. And Lin extended a finger and poked the fairy's delicate face. It was soft and bouncy to the touch, as if it were an egg that had just been peeled off its shell. Tina slowly woke up, and her gem-like eyes stared at Lin, blinking in an extremely mesmerizing manner. How's the Divine Mirror World? Lin asked. The Divine Mirror World was a name that Lin and Tina had decided on after some discussion. It implied that the gods had created this mirror world with Qi Lu City of the ancient Tai Chu realm as the foundation. A peculiar expression appeared on Tina's face as she extended a slender finger and pointed it toward Lin's forehead. See for yourself. Chapter 645. Lin appeared in the air above Qi Lu City, and an expression of surprise and elation appeared on his face as he looked down at the city that was gradually becoming more and more prosperous. Not bad. There are over 1,000 people now, right? They've all become a small tribe now. He saw the familiar faces of Adam and Eve. These two primordial humans were blessed by the heavens, and their appearances were even younger than their children's, as if they would never age. He then looked at their 9 children, as well as the next generation and the generation after that. All of them were aging rather slowly due to the fact that they were cultivating. If it weren't for Tina's introduction, he really wouldn't have been able to tell who was the grandfather and who was the grandson. There are a total of 5 generations, and they've developed into a small tribe of over 1,000 people. From the energy fluctuations within their bodies, I can tell that almost all of them are cultivating. Adam and Eve have even reached the pinnacle of the Tao body stage. Furthermore, the system of the city is also gradually becoming more and more complete. This is extremely fast. Lin clicked his tongue in wonder. The human-sized version of Tina shook her head. No, Jine and Lin, you think it's fast, but it's actually been over 100 years. After such a long time, it's actually quite normal for things to develop to this point. She then pointed a finger in a certain direction, where 2 children were playing with fish by the pond. Their crisp, pleasant laughter reverberated throughout the pond. Guess who they are? And Lin looked at the 2 children and was struck by an indescribable sense of familiarity, but he couldn't recall where he had seen them before. Who were they? He asked curiously. Haha, they're LV Chung and Luo Chung. They're the 2 red-robed elderly men who guard Qi Lu City, Tina said with a smile. 2 shallow dimples appeared on her fair and tender face, making her appear particularly bright and adorable. And Lin immediately came to his senses upon hearing this. So it's them. One's tall and skinny, the other's short and chubby. Their facial features are so similar. He turned to Tina with a surprised expression. What do you mean by their LV Chung and Luo Chung? Tina explained, they're not accepted by the heaven and earth of the ancient Tai Chu realm, but my world can take them in and fuse their souls with the existence of this world, thereby allowing them to live on as brand new lives. They are outsiders. Will it really be okay? And Lin asked worriedly. It's all right. Qi Lu City is split into 2 sides, so I'm just taking them to the other side of the mirror to continue living. Next, I'm going to settle all of the souls in Qi Lu City into this world. Tina's expression was filled with determination and relief. And Lin knew that Tina had already made up her mind on this matter, so he didn't say anything more and just waited for things to develop. This was the first time a living being from the outside world had fused with this world. Judging from the current situation, Tina was doing quite well, and Lin couldn't help but give her a thumbs up. Oh, by the way, what happened to the spirit-engulfing beasts in this world? Lin suddenly asked. A peculiar expression appeared on Tina's face again. It appeared that the spirit-engulfing beast was the reason why she had that expression on her face. This scene made Lin even more curious. Spirit-engulfing beasts, take a look for yourself. Tina heaved a forlorn sigh as she waved a hand through the air. Several hundred screens appeared in the air, all of which were images of the spirit-engulfing beasts. And Lin's lips twitched upon seeing the images. Why are they all in cages? That's right. All of the spirit-engulfing beasts were locked in cages. Some of them were cages constructed from all types of magic tools, while others were cages constructed from all types of ceiling formations. Their inky black bodies were trembling slightly in the cages, but they were howling at the top of their lungs. I want to eat brains. The images were extremely gruesome and tragic. Lin, what the F***CK? Was this the treatment given to the world's villains? Are there no other spirit-engulfing beasts? Have they all been captured? And Lynn couldn't help but ask. Tina massaged her brows with a resigned expression. Aside from the ones that are already dead, all of them have been captured, and Lynn's lips twitched with a perplexed expression. How could this be? Aside from the fact that the spirit-engulfing beasts are a little lacking in intelligence, they're all top-notch in every aspect. How do they end up in such a miserable state? Perhaps it's not just that their intelligence is a little lacking, it's just that their intelligence is way too low. Tina heaved a forlorn sigh. The spirit-engulfing beasts had the upper hand in the beginning. They were naturally very sensitive to highly intelligent living beings and were able to pinpoint the locations of those living beings. Then, they would use their powerful bodies to tear those living beings apart in the wilderness before devouring them. These terrifying outsiders brought nightmarish experiences to all of the highly intelligent living beings on this continent. Many living beings were so scared that they didn't even dare to venture out at night. It was exactly because of these terrifying enemies that all of the tribes put aside their differences and worked together to defend against these outsiders. After that, all of the major tribes discovered that even though the spirit-engulfing beasts were extremely ferocious and violent, and their powers would increase after consuming highly intelligent living beings, they had a fatal flaw, which was that they would become extremely excited upon discovering highly intelligent living beings. Furthermore, they had a strong ability to sense highly intelligent living beings. All of the powerful beings used this to their advantage and set up all types of powerful spell formations to lure the spirit-engulfing beasts before setting up all types of powerful ambushes at predetermined locations. All of the powerful beings used this to their advantage and began to turn the tables on the spirit-engulfing beasts. And Lynn understood what Tina was talking about. This was what it meant to pull aggro. The powerful senses of the spirit-engulfing beasts were the most beneficial factors in pulling aggro. How should he put it? Powerful senses were actually an advantage, but when paired with the fact that they would become extremely excited at the sight of a brain, it instantly became a fatal flaw. Tina shook her head with a disappointed expression. Jine and Lynn, you said that dinosaurs weren't as smart as these powerful beings. They were able to instinctively avoid provoking these powerful beings, which was why they were still active in remote areas. However, the spirit-engulfing beasts only knew how to fight with their lives on the line. Even a god wouldn't be able to save them from this suicidal behavior. Sigh, it's actually within my expectations that these spirit-engulfing beasts would go extinct. That spatial gate has already been sealed by the most powerful beings of the 9 tribes, and all of the living spirit-engulfing beasts have been reduced to lab rats. This war ended in less than 100 years. Tina heaved a forlorn sigh at the end of her sentence, and Lynn forced a smile onto his face. The first type of antagonists in this world are so pitiful. They can be called the dumbest antagonists in history. I feel like we're the ones who are lacking in intelligence after designing these antagonists, Tina chimed in. And Lynn, let's not expose the truth. He had initially wanted to divert Tina's attention, but he didn't think that Tina would be able to spot the truth with just a few words. That's right, the idiot god and the retarded advisor had to take the blame for this. Chapter 646. And Lynn heaved a resigned sigh as he looked at the spirit-engulfing beasts being tortured and researched in a cage with a pained expression. What do we do then? Do it again? Tina placed her hands on her hips and harumphed with indignation. These 9 tribes really don't sit around doing nothing. We've only just taken care of the spirit-engulfing beasts, and they're already at odds with each other again. It seems like they're going to be very uncomfortable if they don't do something. Recently, the Darkwing tribe discovered Chi Lu City and turned their attention to the human race, saying that the human race is an inferior race to them and wants to enslave the human race. Inferior? How did the Darkwing tribe come to this conclusion? And Lynn was quite surprised. They say that humans look similar to them, but humans don't have wings. I have wings, but you don't. A race with its own flaws can't even fly into the sky. So, of course, it's an inferior race. Tina chuckled. And Lynn, he had nothing to say about this kind of inference. If it weren't for the fact that I've restricted the Darkwing tribe's power in secret, thereby weakening them as soon as they enter human territory, the human race really would have been enslaved. Tina pursed her lips as she spoke. It was clear that she was extremely displeased with the Darkwing tribe's arrogant way of thinking. The human race was an inferior race to them? Didn't they know how bad *SS the humans on the Tai Chu continent were? Even her master, Giant and Lin, was a human, so didn't that mean God was an inferior race to them? Tina almost couldn't help but give the Darkwing tribe a hard time, but she repressed that urge in the end. The meaning of Tina's words was very clear. She wanted to do it again. The 9 tribes were like children that she had raised. As opposed to having them fight among themselves, it was better for them to grow as they fought against the foreign tribes. This time, she had to create the perfect antagonist and create an epic war to protect the realm. She wanted the 9 great clans and the human race to rise in this crisis, to create a prosperous era, and to wipe away the shame they had suffered. But then again, how do you create a good villain? Tina stared at Lin with a perplexed expression as she blinked her bright and dazzling gem-like eyes, clearly waiting for Lin's opinion. Lin turned to Tina with a pained expression. To be honest, it's really hard to think of a villain who can't keep up with intelligence, but is also powerful enough to protect the divine mirror world. He thought for a moment before suggesting, how about we create a type of antagonist that's similar to locusts? They can survive through photosynthesis, feed on the blood of highly intelligent life forms, and have extremely strong reproductive abilities. If we don't rely on quality to win, are we going to rely on numbers to deal with the 9 super clans? What a terrible image, Tina said with a hint of disdain. The corner of Lin's mouth twitched a little. High class, so many requirements. All of a sudden, an idea flashed through his mind, and he thought of a high-class villain model. Hey, little Na, we can create some monsters that can use the power of laws. For example, a sickle monster that is guaranteed to die in 3 strikes. A flame monster that can only be damaged by powerful water-type spell techniques. A ghostly monster that can only be detected by sight at night. A Grim Reaper monster that loses a percentage of its health within a 10-meter radius. Tina's eyes lit up before dimming as she shook her head with a regretful expression. I can't do that with my current level of power. And Lin faltered slightly upon hearing this. Even weaker laws won't work. Laws are laws. The power they represent has already transcended beyond normal energy and is of a higher level. There's no such thing as strong or weak laws. Tina's voice was like a fountain hitting a piece of jade. For example, a person with the power of laws can kill all humans with the name of Little Ming. That power is pretty useless, right? And Lin nodded. There aren't many people with the name of Little Ming in this day and age, so it's indeed quite useless. Tina chuckled. Then, there's another person who can change everyone's name to Little Ming. That power of laws doesn't seem to be very useful either, right? And Lin nodded. That's the power of jokes, right? A thought then seemed to have occurred to him, and his pupils contracted. Tina continued. Then, what happens when these 2 people encounter each other? And Lin had already thought of this, and he drew a sharp intake of breath. That's how destructive it would be. That's why the power of laws doesn't actually have a difference in power. It represents a power that transcends beyond the level of energy, and if used well, it would be invincible. However, if this power is used recklessly, it could very well cause chaos in this world or even unimaginable disasters. Hence, I should be more cautious. I'll try to use the power of laws when I'm powerful enough. A hint of solemnity appeared on Tina's face as she spoke about this power, clearly indicating that she was taking this very seriously. And Lin could understand her reasoning after hearing this. However, it would be quite difficult to create villains that would be cool. No matter how hard one tried to create villains with low IQ, they wouldn't be cool at all. And Lin and Tina both wore gloomy expressions. They always had a feeling that they could elevate a certain creature's abilities to an extremely bad *SS level, only to have it turn out to be a retard. With that in mind, they were in no mood to do anything else. The trauma of the spirit-engulfing beast was still lingering in their hearts. And Lin suddenly clapped his hands together. I think there's another way, and that's to redeem the spirit-engulfing beasts. What do you mean? Tina was a little perplexed, and Lin replied, didn't the spirit-engulfing beasts lose because they don't have brains? Tina's expression darkened. It's not that they don't have brains, it's just that they're not smart enough. It's the same. It's a retard anyway, and dinosaurs are also retards. Why can dinosaurs live, but not spirit-engulfing beasts? What I'm saying is, and Lin paused momentarily before continuing. So what if the spirit-engulfing beasts don't have brains? We could just transform them into extremely powerful killing machines. Is there a difference? Tina was still perplexed. There is. We've made them very powerful to begin with, and they specialize in hunting highly intelligent life forms in order to increase their own power. However, their detection of highly intelligent life forms is rather weak, so they won't mindlessly pounce on them. Instead, they roam around the continent and are extremely elusive and have extremely powerful concealment abilities. In this way, it won't be easy for us to set traps and ambushes on them. The 9 tribes bait plan won't work then, and it'll be very difficult to track them down. Perhaps the 9 tribes will just go out to hunt, and the monsters will suddenly pounce on them. No matter where they are, there will always be danger. Wouldn't these nightmarish monsters be a great motivator for highly intelligent life forms to work hard in their cultivation, and in a very powerful way? And Lin spoke with excitement. Tina's eyes lit up upon hearing this. That's a great idea. Let's give it a try. As for why the 2 of them still chose the spirit-engulfing beasts, that was probably due to some sort of obsession. They wanted to get back up from where they had fallen. Hopefully, the second generation of spirit-engulfing beasts will be able to rid them of their titles of stupid god of creation and retarded advisor. Chapter 647. Thus, in the southern region of the divine mirror world, a gargantuan spatial gate suddenly appeared. The second-generation spirit-engulfing beasts began to pour out from the spatial gate. They were no longer yelling, "I want to eat brains." Instead, they were muttering the word revenge. Their auras were subdued like ghosts, but they also possessed the vigilance of wild beasts. They slowly disappeared into the darkness, and they really did look like hunters of darkness. And Lin and Tina stared at the second-generation spirit-engulfing beasts with satisfaction. Villains like these were definitely going to be a nightmarish experience for the 9 tribes. Tina had modified the original spirit-engulfing beasts, so the energy expended was much less than when she had created a creature out of thin air. Hence, she still had enough energy to accelerate the flow of time. The first-dimensional gate that symbolized the humiliation of the villains began to collapse. This event symbolized the true victory of the 9 great clans against the foreign invasion. All the races rejoiced, and many historians began to write heroic epics of this battle, making the heroes of some races immortalized in history. However, this joy did not last for long before a new crisis began to befall them. In the beginning, some hunters who ventured deep into the forest of mutant beasts mysteriously disappeared, and some powerful beings who ventured out of their territory never returned. As time went on, similar incidents began to occur more and more frequently. In the end, a powerful being of the Holy Martial Clan returned, creating a massive stir across the entire continent. He encountered an extremely powerful inky black creature beside a spirit lake. The creature's aura was subdued, but its speed and power were extremely terrifying. If it weren't for the fact that the powerful being's cultivation base was at the spirit-nurturing pinnacle stage, he would most likely have been killed. In the end, after an intense battle, the Holy Martial Clan powerful being was able to subdue the black creature before transporting it back to the city. This was a creature that they were very familiar with, the spirit-engulfing beasts. The spirit-engulfing beasts had returned. This piece of news swept through the 9 tribes like a massive storm, and even the humans who had some ties with the 9 tribes had heard about it. The spirit-engulfing beasts had become more powerful, and they were no longer so stupid. They wouldn't blindly lunge at the place where there were more intelligent creatures. They chose to hide in the wilderness, at the bottom of the ocean, and in the clouds and mist in the sky, waiting for an opportunity to strike. All of a sudden, A huge sense of danger loomed over the heads of the 9 great clans. They seemed to have been stimulated by something and were rejuvenated with energy and fighting spirit. One by one, they began to form a crusade team. They were determined to exterminate these resurrected monsters. Battles broke out one after another on the outskirts of the faction. Roar! A tiger-shaped, spirit-engulfing beast suddenly leaped down from a certain tree before pouncing toward a team of humanoid snakes. "Be careful!" a man shouted and pushed his hands towards the black tiger body that was pouncing towards him. Blazing flames spurted out. The tiger-shaped, spirit-engulfing beast suddenly spread open its wings, and it arced through the air to evade the man's flame attack. At this moment, the other 4 snake spirit clan members on the ground also hurled spell techniques toward the flying tiger. The leaves rustled in the wind. A twisted and deep black shadow slowly appeared in the forest. It was a 6-tailed fox. While the flying tiger was distracting it, it slowly approached the team. Its 6 tails were as sharp as spears, and they suddenly elongated before puncturing the chests of 5 snake spirit clan powerful beings. During the night, a fire raven with crimson flames burning all over its body landed on the top of a tree. The temperature of the flames wasn't very high. Instead, it was quite warm and didn't burn the leaves of the tree, even after coming into contact with them. It was just about to close its eyes to rest when a huge black python, enshrouded in shadows, suddenly shot forth like a cannonball before opening its cavernous mouth. A disdainful smile appeared on the fire raven's face as it spread open its wings and flew into the sky, evading the python's attack. So what if the spirit-engulfing beast was powerful? It could fly, so it had plenty of time to take care of the spirit-engulfing beast hanging from the tree. Just as this thought was running through its mind, a mist of blood suddenly erupted from its chest. A sense of impending doom engulfed the fire raven's entire body, and it sensed an extremely terrifying aura behind it. A spirit-engulfing beast with a pair of wings on its back plunged a spear into the fire raven's chest before absorbing its life force relentlessly. Blood spread, and so did the horror. Perhaps it was because the first generation of spirit-engulfing beasts were too stupid, but the 9 tribes didn't actually take this incident very seriously. They merely treated it as a rebirth of the spirit-engulfing beasts. However, they began to discover that the spirit-engulfing beasts that had appeared this time were far more terrifying than they had imagined. The team that didn't have a spirit-nurturing stage powerful being among their ranks would be completely annihilated if they encountered the spirit-engulfing beasts. After a period of battle, the team was completely routed, and they quickly began to retreat. Many of the hot-blooded cultivators silently returned to their cities. They wanted to do great things and become heroes, but the countless bloody battles that had taken place reminded them that if they didn't have a good grasp of their own power, they would die very quickly. The appearance of the spirit-engulfing beasts and the devastating battles that had taken place had made the 9 tribes realize that they were not powerful enough to control the entire continent. If they wanted to survive, they had to become more powerful. The battle between the 9 tribes and the spirit-engulfing beasts continued. However, their battles were becoming more and more elite. The weak had no right to participate as they discovered that the spirit-engulfing beasts could become more powerful by devouring life forms. Thus, they slowly expanded their territory before constructing walls. "There's going to be a major change in heaven and earth soon," Tina suddenly said. And Lin's interest was piqued, and he started to look forward to what was to come. One day, a top-tier team of the true demon tribe was surrounded by several dozen spirit-engulfing beasts on a black mountain. There were spirit-devouring beasts that could fly in the sky, as well as ferocious spirit-devouring beasts that were on the ground. The 5 spirit-nurturing stage true demons used a spell formation to defend against the relentless onslaught of attacks, and they were on the verge of defeat. "Team leader, you have to run. We'll carve an opening for you, even if it costs us our lives." A true demon spoke with a determined expression. The team leader remained silent as death approached. The black mist domain around his body transformed into a black dragon that revolved around the spell formation to defend against the spirit-engulfing beast attacks. The team leader suddenly sat down to meditate upon hearing his team members' words. Wind and clouds suddenly began to surge around him. Dark clouds suddenly appeared within a radius of 1.5 kilometers. Lightning crackled, and vital energy surged violently. What was going on? All of the team members were astonished. Could it be team leader? One of the team members stared at their team leader with incredulity on his face. All of the team members drew a sharp intake of breath. Was their team leader finally going to take the step that no one had been able to take? And Lin also became excited upon seeing this. This is tribulation transcendence? Is this world finally going to give birth to a true soul formation stage, Cultivator? A smile appeared on Tina's face. Tribulation transcendence. This is proof that a certain level of life is not tolerated by heaven and earth, so divine punishment must fall. If a living being successfully transcends the tribulation and gives birth to a powerful being, then this world can progress to a higher level. This is the natural law of the world, and it's a win-win situation. And Lin nodded as he looked at the true demon with anticipation on his face. Boom! A dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly fell upon the true demon's body, causing his entire body to tremble violently. All of the team members had no idea what tribulation transcendence looked like, and their expressions shifted drastically as they looked up into the sky. What kind of freak is this? How dare you ambush our team leader? Show yourself. And Lin. Chapter 648. The team leader immediately intervened just as the team members were about to charge into the sky to fight the lightning. Stop. Just keep the spirit-engulfing beasts at bay. I can sense that the lightning in the sky is a test that I must undergo in order to make my breakthrough. Their team leader held a lot of authority in their hearts, so all of the team members obediently chose not to interfere. Instead, they set up a spell formation to defend themselves against the attacks of the spirit-engulfing beasts. Rumble. Thunder rumbled and dazzling bolts of lightning fell from the sky, striking the true demon captain's body. The true demon team leader used his own power to defend himself against the corrosion of the lightning. But even so, his body was slowly becoming charred black, and he was showing signs of succumbing to the lightning. Little Na, is there a total of 49 bolts of soul formation stage lightning in this world? And Lin stroked his chin as he asked. Tina shook her head awkwardly. I'm not sure. This is a natural reaction of the world, so I don't know how many bolts of lightning there will be. In reality, 40 bolts of lightning had already struck the true demon team leader as she spoke. Boom! An extremely thick bolt of lightning suddenly fell from the sky before striking the true demon team leader's head. The true demon team leader's face was charred black, and his eyes rolled over into the back of his head as black smoke wafted from his mouth. Team leader. All of the team members let loose cries of surprise. Some of the team members had tears streaming down their faces. Wah! Team leader, how did you die? Team leader was killed by lightning. It's over, it's all over. Some of the team members spoke in despair. The true demon team leader's vitality was severed, and the dark clouds in the sky slowly dissipated. And Lin, he's really dead? Tina, the two of them had thought that they were going to witness the birth of a grand event, but who would have thought that it would end like this? Tina waved a hand, and a white light enshrouded the spirit-engulfing beasts. The ferocious spirit-engulfing beasts then suddenly self-detonated in front of the 4 true demon-powerful beings. All of the team members stared at the scenes unfolding before their eyes with dumbstruck expressions. Why did the spirit-engulfing beasts suddenly self-detonate just a second ago? They didn't even have a chance to celebrate after being rescued from the brink of death. Their hearts were filled with shock and confusion. Consider this a small compensation for the first living being to undergo tribulation in this world. I'll also send some blessings to his family. Tina replied with a slightly disinterested expression. Suddenly, the team member on the ground seemed to have thought of something and shouted excitedly, "It's the captain!" Captain? What does this have to do with the captain? The other 3 members were puzzled. Captain should have successfully broken through. He abandoned his decaying body and became a brand new life. He used his power to help us. Otherwise, how could these spirit-engulfing beasts have suddenly perished? It must be the captain's doing. That team member shouted excitedly, as if he was excited by his own speculation. Then why can't we see the captain? Some of the team members were still confused. The team member spoke as if he had seen through everything. Captain must have ascended. We weren't strong enough, so naturally, we couldn't see the captain. Before the captain left, he helped us out. You should have gone to a place with immortal spirits, a place with eternal happiness. Naturally, you wouldn't stay in a mortal world. All the team members came to a sudden realization and laughed happily, excitedly celebrating their captain's ascension. All of their grief over their captain's death was instantly swept away, and Lin's lips twitched as he looked on. Their revered captain's body hadn't even turned cold yet, but all of the team members were so happy. They were laughing and chatting with one another, and some of them were even bringing out drinks to celebrate. Was this the legendary disco dance at the grave? In the end, Lin couldn't help but comment, that guy was really eloquent and had a wild imagination. He has the potential to become a swindler. Tina waved a hand, and the two of them left the place. Her attitude was very clear. She really didn't want to continue watching this bizarre and retarded scene. Within the main city of the True Demon Tribe, news of a top-tier powerful being transcending tribulation began to spread. Several dozen spirit-engulfing beasts were slain in the blink of an eye. Extremely powerful strength, transcending beyond the mortal body, the allure of ascending to the realm of eternal happiness. All of these things were stimulating the minds of these true demon cultivators. An even more fervent cultivation craze began to appear, and it instantly swept through the 9 tribes. Even Tina didn't think that her casual intervention would create such a butterfly effect that it would create a massive storm throughout the entire world. The development of the world was not going to stop. There were more and more half-step soul formation stage powerful beings, as well as more and more living beings transcending tribulations. One powerful being after another failed their tribulation transcendence and were killed on the spot by tribulation lightning. After that, family and friends began to beat drums and gongs, and even the entire nation was in jubilation. Everyone was celebrating the successful ascension of the powerful beings they were familiar with. It had to be said, this was quite a spectacle. Little Na, why is the success rate of tribulation transcended so low? Is there a problem somewhere? In Lin's mind, cultivators on the Tai Chu continent had at least a 50% chance of successfully transcending tribulation transcendence. Why was it that no one here had succeeded? Perhaps it's because this is the first time this world has been created, so it's a bit more difficult. Tina was not in a very good mood, and her voice was a little gloomy. She looked on with a dark expression and didn't know what to say. Lin repressed his laughter. Never would he have thought that failing a tribulation transcendence would be considered a successful ascension. All of this could be attributed to that extremely imaginative true demon. Of course, Tina's intervention had also played a major role in this bizarre phenomenon. It was exactly because of this that Tina was feeling very tired. 3 years later, General Hong Tsong of the True Demon Tribe began his tribulation transcendence. Over 10,000 true demons gathered on the extremely spacious black jade drill ground to witness this grand moment. One bolt of divine lightning after another crashed into Hong Tsong's body, and his aura became more and more powerful. 10 bolts, 20 bolts, 30 bolts, 40 bolts. As the divine lightning continued to fall, all of the true demons had already raised their wine cups in excitement, waiting for the divine lightning to completely scorch Hong Tsong's body and allow him to completely ascend to the heavens. 47 bolts. 48 bolts. General Hong Tsong has endured more lightning than any other tribulation transcendence powerful being we've ever seen. General Hong Tsong must be a tribulation transcendence stage powerful being. The 49th bolt of lightning was like a dazzling blue sword that sliced through heaven and earth, and it crashed into General Hong Tsong's head as a thunderous boom erupted between heaven and earth. General Hong Tsong roared as his aura completely transformed. His life force seemed to have undergone some kind of transformation, becoming vast and powerful. In the sky above, the black clouds slowly parted and the lightning dissipated. Smoke rose from General Hong Song's body, and even though he was severely injured, his eyes were extremely bright, and his body was also exuding an extremely powerful life force. He looked around at the onlookers as he panted heavily. Over 10,000 onlookers stared at this scene with wide eyes, as if they had seen a ghost. How? How can General Hong Song still move? Shouldn't his life force have transcended and transcended beyond his physical body? The lightning clouds have dispersed, so the tribulation lightning should have already ended. Could it be that he failed his tribulation transcendence? No. General Hong Song's aura seems to have reached an even higher level, and his aura is extremely vast, so it doesn't look like he failed his tribulation transcendence. A true demon voiced his opinion. The true demons were not idiots. They looked at the extremely powerful General Hong Song and knew that it was definitely wrong to say that he had failed his tribulation transcendence. As such, an extremely terrifying thought welled up in the hearts of the true demons. Bam! Some true demons' hands trembled, and they accidentally dropped the wine glasses that they had prepared to celebrate their successful tribulation transcendence. The crisp sound of the wine glasses shattering reverberated through the quiet square, as if symbolizing the shattering of something. They felt as if they were about to throw up a mouthful of blood. Could it be that this is the real? Stop! Someone yelled. The reality was so cruel that they were unable to accept it, because they had danced for 10 whole years after the deaths of countless powerful beings who had failed their tribulation transcendence. Chapter 649. General Hong Song looked at the tens of thousands of dumbstruck onlookers, and waves of shock surged through his heart. He tried to activate his domain, and crimson flames soared into the sky as an extremely powerful aura swept through the surrounding area. All of the spectating true demons were struck by a sense of subservience due to the disparity between their life forms. So this is the power of a successful tribulation transcendence. General Hong Song clenched his fists. He was already convinced that he was the first person to have successfully transcended the tribulation. Boom! Right at this moment, a phenomenon appeared in the sky. Rainbow light engulfed the entire heaven and earth, encompassing the entire world. At the same time, the great Tao of heaven and earth began to reverberate, and all living beings were baptized by the sound of the heavenly music as they underwent some sort of transformation. A white light suddenly flashed through Tina's eyes. This white light was like the light of primordial chaos, and it was imbued with a boundless divine charm. Her delicate body trembled slightly, and her exquisite and graceful body turned into golden particles of light and dissipated. Jine and Lin, the time has come. This world is about to upgrade, so I'm going to merge with the heavens first. Tina left these words behind before disappearing completely. Upgrade? And Lin's heart jolted with shock, and his breathing accelerated. He had also been baptized by the heavenly music of this world, and his soul seemed to have been purified in some way. This purification was targeted at Enlin himself, not the body that Tina had given him. The most obvious change was that his consciousness had become more resilient and vast, and it had already reached the return to void stage. Rumble. Heaven and earth began to tremor and rumble, and all living beings were alarmed. At the same time, the heavenly music and rainbow light made all living beings feel extremely intoxicated. Changes occurred unknowingly, and the phenomenon also began to slowly fade. In the end, everything fell silent. Tina's body began to appear beside Enlin. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, and her body was as soft as a willow leaf in the wind. Enlin hurriedly made his way over to her before wrapping his arms around her soft and delicate body. "How are you feeling?" Tina shook her head with a smile. "I've overexerted myself. The world's upgrade this time has resulted in an even more drastic spatial expansion than I had imagined. The continent has expanded from 5,000 kilometers in radius to 30,000 kilometers in radius. Then wouldn't it be bigger than Earth?" And Lin was amazed. Also, after I fuse with heaven and earth, I feel like my authority has increased a little. Although Tina was very weak, her beautiful eyes were flashing with excitement. And Lin asked curiously, "What authority?" "For example, I can create highly intelligent creatures, or I can transfer matter and life forms between the two worlds," Tina explained in a slow voice. And Lin's eyes widened as he sucked in a breath of cold air. The main city of the true demon tribe descended from the sky and entered General Hong Song's body along with the disappearance of the unusual phenomenon. That was a reward for triggering this opportunity after the world leveled up. This gift came from the heavens and earth, and it was undoubtedly very useful to a living being. After a brief silence, the tens of thousands of true demons finally erupted into a wave of cheers. They congratulated General Hong Song from the bottom of their hearts. This was the first expert to set foot in a brand new realm. They were proud and happy because of this. The news that one could only progress to the soul formation stage after transcending 49 bolts of tribulation, lightning, swept through the 9 tribes like a hurricane. All of the highly intelligent living beings of the 9 tribes were shocked and dumbstruck. However, they had no choice but to believe this was true when they thought about the unusual phenomenon that had just occurred. In other words, all of the powerful beings who had thought that they had successfully transcended their tribulation had actually died. This news almost made all of the tribes vomit blood in fright, and some of them even fainted from rage. All of the half-step soul formation stage powerful beings were scared **class. Only one F**king powerful being had successfully transcended their tribulation every 10 years. How is this any different from committing suicide? All of them involuntarily chose to suppress their cultivation bases and did not dare to make a breakthrough. However, there were powerful beings who were afraid of death, and there were also powerful beings who recovered after a few days and chose to continue onward. Although this saying had not yet become popular in this world, there were already people who were practicing it. It was as if they had been influenced by the changes in heaven and earth. Within this year, powerful beings from the 9 tribes all made breakthroughs, and the success rate was as high as 30%. Soul formation stage powerful beings emerged from the 9 tribes one after another, ushering in a brand new era of glory. Compared to the prosperity of the 9 tribes, the human race was also developing at a rapid pace. The population of Chi Lu City had already exceeded 100,000, which was quite a sizable number. Even though no soul formation stage powerful beings had been born, Adam and Eve were already at the pinnacle of the spirit nurturing stage. Almost everyone had begun to cultivate, and the atmosphere was very positive. Not only that, but there were also many developments in pill refinement, tool refinement, talisman refinement, technology, and so on. This was where the human race differed from the 9 tribes. Even though they were all highly intelligent life forms, the development of the human race was very different from that of the 9 tribes. The 9 tribes were all extremely powerful beings, and they liked to rely on their own power in everything they did. They believed that improving one's own power was the only way to progress, and, as such, they were obsessed with cultivation and didn't pay much attention to anything else. Humans were naturally weaker, but they knew how to use external forces to make themselves more powerful. Magic tools, spell formations, talismans, pill refinement, and so on blossomed like 100 flowers, flourishing in an orderly manner. Technology was also developing, but it was a lot slower than Lin had imagined. However, this was understandable. After all, everyone could become more powerful through cultivation and extend their lifespans. But what if you wasted your time researching technology? Could you become more powerful in a short time and extend your lifespan? Of course not. All living beings were afraid of death. Hence, if a cultivation path that could extend one's lifespan or even immortality was offered to them, would they be stupid enough to waste their time researching science? Not even in their right mind. Science required the continuous accumulation, research, and experimentation of tens of millions of people in order to usher in explosive breakthroughs and transformations. Humans would die at the end of their lifespans at the end of 100 years. So who would be willing to silently sacrifice themselves and become a stepping stone for future generations? The temptation of cultivation had caused humans to neglect the invention of science. However, there were some special people who truly loved to research the principles of all things and to invent and create things. Some of them were completely devoted to science, while others were cultivating while researching science. Among these people, the most representative was the ninth child of Adam and Eve. That's right, it was the single dog whose other children had married each other, leaving him behind in a tragic world. This man by the name of Seth didn't love women, but he loved science. He was going to become a scientist. Perhaps it was because he was the child of Adam and Eve, so his lifespan was exceptionally long. Even after so many years, he still looked like he was in his 20s. However, his face was now covered in stubble, and he had seen through the vicissitudes of life, giving him the demeanor of a scientist. As the chief scientist of Chi-Lu City, Seth had already mastered the original scientific research of Chi-Lu City. One invention after another was created by them, including all types of looms, printing presses, gunpowder, metallurgy, chemical engineering. In recent years, they had even led the scientific team to create steam locomotives, steamships, and other inventions, thereby breaking through the original technological level of Chi-Lu City and ushering the human race into the age of steam. And Lin couldn't help but be filled with anticipation at the sight of the human race becoming more and more prosperous. Just how far could the humans of this world advance in technology?